cannot claim sovereignty in space, meaning that if either America or China settles on the far side of the moon, it cannot say this is our territory. But the reality might well turn out to be different.
One of the concern I have is that given the fact that only those nations with the capability, which includes launch and ability to land on the moon and carry out extraction, would have a first mover advantage. And so we do not have the legal regimen today as to how resources on the moon will be shared and how that could be equitably done.
The risk of a first-come, first-served ethos taking over brings us neatly back to our original question. Who will be next to walk on the moon? We've discovered that current plans don't actually stop at just walking on the moon, but rather using it as a pit stop to launch further missions to Mars and to send back solar energy to Earth from the lunar surface. Fast-moving technological developments allow more and more to be done on the moon without the need to send humans at all. Nonetheless, current timelines suggest that Americans will walk on the moon again in 2028. China 2 years later, and India 10 years after that. So that suggests the United States looks set to come out on top once again. But let's come back down to earth for a moment. Project deadlines have a habit of slipping. In fact, they already have. So let's give the final word to our fourth expert witness.
What I have noticed is that the one thing about the Chinese space program, which is extremely interesting, is their ability to meet deadlines. I would say that my bet is on China, that they would be the first nation in the 21st century to be able to land on the moon with the end goal of space resource utilization and permanent base development.
This inquiry was presented by me, Tanya Beckett, produced by Louise Clark, researched by Matt Tolson, and edited by Tara McDermott. The studio manager was Richard Hannaford.
That was the BBC's The Inquiry. I'm Jeff Goods here on CBC Radio 1.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcuso with our team at CBC's Information Radio. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. It's -9 in the city of Winnipeg this morning. And for today, we'll go to a high of -2, and it's going to be mainly cloudy, unlike yesterday's big blue sky. Thanks for joining us. The show is on air till 8:37, being part of your morning. And if you need us in traffic throughout the morning, 788-3093 is the commute line. 3 minutes to 6 as mentioned. Let's say good morning to the team. Brad Lilly's behind the controls this morning of YouTube. Morning, Brad. Corey Funk is our show director and covers the commute. Good morning, Corey. And hello, Abby Adeyemi, who's behind the controls today as always. And Abby is our technical producer and also covers weather for us on air. Right now, Heather Wells is in our news center with developing stories. Hi there.
Good morning. Well, not only do they have to endure the stench, but now people in much of southwest Winnipeg are being asked to cut back on their water use as city crews continue trying to fix a leaky sewer pipe at the Fort Garry Bridge. Evan Erickson in Fort Richmond says the sewage leak is concerning, but being asked to conserve water is a tall order. We're going to hear more from people who live in those areas. Indigenous leaders, advocates, and community members are all meeting in Winnipeg to address the need for a national law to protect ancestral burial sites. Jackie Bouvier is a third-generation residential school survivor from Saskatchewan. She had 2 sisters who died at school and were buried there. She plans to go to the site and hold a ceremony for her sisters and supports the push for a national law to protect those burial sites. We'll hear more in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, if you're one of those people that's going to be having a shorter shower or skipping it today in South Winnipeg to try and follow what Heather mentioned, conserving water due to the sewage leakage, we'd love to hear from you. How's this affecting your morning? And then also, what are your thoughts on this, being asked to conserve water? 788-3205. We'll throw the listener line out to you early. I did not mention current temperatures elsewhere. So I was saying that Winnipeg right now is at -9, but over in Brandon, good morning, you're also at -9. Dauphin's mainly clear, -11. Up in Thompson, light snow falling, and it's -24. Stay with us. Lots of show to come, as mentioned. And World Report, though, is coming up first. At 6 o'clock, the latest in national and international news.
On Cue with Tom Power. Adam Beach has been in over 60 films and TV shows, from Canada's North of 60 to Clint Eastwood's Flags of Our Fathers. Adam Beach will tell you how he began acting in Manitoba and why he's drawn to his complicated character in the new film, Exile.
I did not speak with her!
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
Whenever you guys are ready.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. It is being called an unprecedented ruling. Alabama Supreme Court says that frozen embryos are children under state law. That means that anyone who destroys them could be held criminally liable. The CBC's Richard Madden joins me now from Washington. And Richard, what are the circumstances surrounding this ruling?
Yeah, this is all based on 3 sets of parents who sued their medical provider when their frozen embryos were accidentally destroyed. A trial court rejected their wrongful death lawsuit, but last week, the state's high court disagreed, with the Chief Justice using quotes from the Bible about the sanctity of unborn life. Now, IVF treatment uses as many eggs as possible, so that has doctors concerned if they would face wrongful death lawsuits if they discard them. Here's the CEO of Infertility Association Resolve, Barbara Kalura.
Now the court is saying that that's a person. Can we freeze embryos? I don't know. Can you freeze a person? What will happen to all of those embryos?
Now, this ruling could not only raise the price of fertility treatment in Alabama, the risks and unknown legal issues could also force some clinics in that state to simply stop treatments and shut down.
This has some broader implications, not only for those in the state of Alabama, but across the U.S.
Yeah, other states could follow Alabama's lead, which could dramatically impact access to fertility treatment in certain states. Now that Alabama's court ruling says that embryos have the same legal protections as a child under state law. Now, the White House is calling this ruling a terrifying development, blasting Republican leaders for reducing access to fertility treatment. They're also turning it into a campaign issue for women's rights heading into November's election.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. Syrian state TV says 2 people have been killed by Israeli airstrikes on Damascus. People are removing debris and pushing destroyed cars away from a charred 10-story building. The neighborhood has residential buildings, schools, and Iranian cultural centers. It is also near a heavily guarded complex used by security agencies. Israel's military has not commented on reports it was responsible for the attack. Hours later, another large blast was reported in Damascus. Eyewitnesses say it shook windows across the city. Ukraine urgently needs artillery shells, and Canada is under pressure to start producing more munitions. But until it can do that, Canada is signaling it will work with the Czech Republic to get more artillery shells to Ukraine. Murray Brewster has the details.
Just about everywhere he goes these days, Defense Minister Bill Blair gets asked about ramped-up munitions production in Canada. He has, however, been talking with allies.
I've entered into a memorandum of understanding with one of our European allies, the Czech Republic, with respect to perhaps acquiring munitions that they currently have in their possession that will enable us to acquire those munitions and make them available more rapidly to Ukraine.
Petr Pavel, president of the Czech Republic, last weekend said his country had secured 800,000 artillery rounds in different countries. It needs help from allies to get them to Ukraine. Defense sources tell CBC News that Canada has been looking at the Czech proposal and is prepared to contribute as much as $30 million. There's concern among allies, however, that Canada may use this to continue to defer on ramping up its own domestic production. Bill Blair urges patience.
We'll have more to say in the not too distant future about how we're investing in increased Canadian production of munitions.
Kristen Cianferrani of the Canadian Association of Security and Defense Industries says her concern is how politics is creeping into the debate.
We're seeing these things become wedge issues, Ukraine becoming a wedge issue.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says a shortage of munitions was one of the reasons his troops withdrew last weekend from the strategic eastern city of Avdiivka, and the Russians are taking advantage of delays in aid to Ukraine. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
India is launching its largest international naval event today. Canada is among the 50 countries taking part in the exercise. It's aimed at boosting maritime cooperation. It's also highlighting India's growing strategic importance in the Indo-Pacific region. Freelance reporter Rebecca Bundan brings us that story.
India's biennial Milan naval exercise, meaning meeting or union in Hindi, started in 1995 and has grown in its size and significance over the years. This year's event comes amid a challenging geopolitical backdrop, including growing concerns over the security situation in the Red Sea. India's Navy says that 15 warships from countries including the US, Iran, Russia and Japan are due to participate in a naval exercise in the Bay of Bengal.
It also speaks to the influence that India is increasingly commanding in the global arena.
Defence analyst Shruti Pandalai says the event comes at a critical time.
You're talking about an exercise which is looking at enhancing maritime security and safety of maritime commerce, which has become very important in this current sort of global climate of fractured geopolitics.
The harbour phase has already commenced, while the sea drills will take place from Saturday, coinciding with 2 years since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Canada is also participating in the event. Relations between the countries continue to be strained, months after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau accused India of being involved in the killing of a Sikh activist in British Columbia, something which New Delhi denies. Rebecca Bundan for CBC News, Mumbai.
Farmers in India run from police firing tear gas at the Punjab-Haryana border. They're trying to resume their march to the capital. Talks with the government failed earlier this week. Thousands of farmers have been camping out along the Shambu border. Police put up barricades to stop them. Today, some farmers brought in bulldozers and other heavy machinery. They're warning they will use them to push their way through to Delhi. The farmers are demanding guaranteed minimum prices for certain crops. They say they will continue their protests until their demands are met. Thousands of trainee doctors in South Korea are walking off the job today. They're protesting the government's plan to admit more students to medical schools. The plan is supposed to meet the growing demand for health care in one of the world's most rapidly aging societies. But the protesters say there are enough doctors, and the government should focus on better pay and working conditions. South Korea's safety minister says the protest is threatening patient lives and organizers could be arrested. Alberta is preparing for an early start to this year's wildfire season. The province had a record-breaking season last year, and now lower snowpacks and dry weather forecasts are forcing officials to move up their plans. The CBC's Julia Wong explains.
The snow is sparse in Whitecourt, Alberta. That, coupled with dry conditions and warmer than usual temperatures, is fueling concern this wildfire season could be a rough one.
We are declaring an early start to the 2024 wildfire season.
So Alberta's season started yesterday instead of the typical March 1st. Alberta's Forestry Minister Todd Loewen.
This past year, when we look back, the fire started earlier than expected.
In 2023, thousands of people were forced out of their homes because of encroaching flames. 2.2 million hectares ultimately burned, the worst season in the province's history. Contracts for crews and equipment are starting 2 weeks early, and Alberta Forestry is asking for money for an additional 100 firefighters.
Well, I think we're going to be more prepared than we were last year for sure.
Alberta Wildfire Executive Director Bernie Schmidt on what people can expect this spring.
And that is very difficult to predict. El Nino is predicted to slacken off here in the next little while. What that's going to do is change the weather patterns coming into Alberta.
The opposition NDP say the province would have been better off if it did not need to worry about hiring at the start of every season. Alberta NDP forestry critic Heather Sweet.
We wouldn't be in this situation today if we had year-round firefighting.
On top of that, the Alberta government is again asking people with relevant experience or heavy equipment to volunteer and support wildfire crews. Julia Wong, CBC News, Whitecourt, Alberta.
It's a big day for Elton John fans. The Rocket Man is auctioning off some of his most prized possessions. Nearly 1,000 items from John's Atlanta home are on the block at Christie's in New York. They include some of his costumes, jewelry, and even a luxury car. The items have been on display at Christie's Auction House in Rockefeller Center for a couple of weeks now. The collection also features some high-end artwork. It is all expected to go up for up to $10 million.
And all the science.
That is World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
It's just my job 5 days a week. A rocket.
Such a good tune. I'm Mercy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio. You're listening to CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app, on YouTube. We're everywhere. And in your kitchen, too. That is if you're up and at it, making coffee already. Thanks for joining us here on the morning show. This hour on the program, we're going to hear more about the Jets game last night. Jets back in the win column. But we're going to hear from the designer of the Jets' new Black History Month apparel line. It was featured at last night's game here in Winnipeg. So stay tuned. We'll hear more about it. Also this hour on the show, we'll have a discussion with an international law expert about what he's observing this week at the International Court of Justice that is hearing arguments that go to the heart of the Israeli-Palestinian question. And at 10 to 7, it is a time for a medical column. It's Wednesday morning, and today Dr. Raj Bhardwaj is going to talk to us about the causes of a very common condition, lower back pain. Saying it with emphasis because so many people struggle with lower back pain. But when do you worry about it? What should you really do about it? And is there an age difference, where you should worry more or less if you're feeling that crink, I'll call it, in your lower back? Can be so debilitating. So Dr. Bhardwaj, that's the medical column coming up before 7. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells, who's in our news center to talk about developing stories. Hi.
Good morning. Well, a man who was switched at birth more than 60 years ago says he's moving closer to understanding who he is. About 2 years ago, Edward Ambrose learned he and another man had been switched at birth at a hospital in Arborg in 1955. Ambrose grew up with a Ukrainian family, learned he is actually Métis, and says it was emotional when he received his citizenship card from the Manitoba Métis Federation last week. We're going to hear more from him. And the first day with community safety officers patrolling on Winnipeg transit buses is being called a success. 21 officers rode downtown bus routes yesterday, and one rider, Colleen McManus, says she takes the bus every day, and sometimes it gets a little scary. She's happy to see these safety officers. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 6:30.
So Heather Wells, in your morning, what causes you to use the most water in your routine?
Well, either the shower or I do kind of brush my teeth for a while. I have this electric toothbrush, and I love it.
A long toothbrusher.
I
do. Coffee for me. I make a big pot of coffee for sure. I mean, I'm thinking hand washing, your teeth, your hair. Of course, we're talking about it because of what's going on in South Winnipeg, right?
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. What are they called? Cottage rules, don't flush unless it's necessary.
Yeah. So that's what people are dealing with. Crews, of course, continuing to fix this massive sewage spill near the Fort Garry Bridge. The city is asking people in much of the Southwest to conserve water, so your morning habits might be affected today. Just want to read a quick comment that already came in on that front, and call us if you want to weigh in. Marianne McCarthy said there should have been better infrastructure created before building all of these new developments south of Winnipeg. Raise their taxes to fix this and stop polluting the waterways. That's what's important. The Red River watershed is what's important, not housing for the rich, as she puts it. I'm tired of seeing this happen. Developers cut corners, they increase profits, governments turn a blind eye to it. It's disgusting, she says. We've got people living here in tents in the dead of winter. Time to start building affordable, sustainable housing that is not profit motivated. No one needs to live in an enormous mansion. So Marianne McCarthy looking at this from the lens of, the pipes and the infrastructure and the increasing load that's put on our systems through the eyes of what she's seeing in terms of development in that part of the city. So the city's request, by the way, to conserve water applies to St. Norbert, Fort Richmond, Richmond West, Waverly West, and Bridgewater. Also, Linden Woods, Linden Ridge, White Ridge, Waverly Heights, and the University of Manitoba area. So, I mean, this is a big swath of South Winnipeg where you're going to be conserving water. We are reaching out to city councillors, by the way, for that part of the city to get some more detail this morning. Because I know last night I posted on Facebook and a lot of you were sort of still just getting into this, understanding of what this would mean in your lives as that news developed through the day. So there you have it. And Marianne, thanks for writing to Facebook. Let's get into our weather forecast. Next, Abby Adeyemi, what do we understand about today?
Yeah, it's a bit of a chilly stat, but still mild. As you're getting ready to face the day, Winnipeg is waking up to mainly cloudy skies. The current temperature is sitting at -9 degrees, and the winds are, I said gentle and mild for you. But just remember, it might feel brisk because of the speed of the wind chill coming your way. And if we look ahead throughout the day, expect the clouds to stay with us. We're going to be reaching a high of -2. Now, if we look outside the city, it's mostly going to be sun and clouds for Brandon. They're going to be seeing a high of -3. Dauphin, for folks in Dauphin, -2, and -15 for folks in Thompson. But right now, Winnipeg, we're waking up to -9.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Abby Adeyemi, I'll be back with next weather through the show. Corey Funk has been sitting patiently by, waiting to tell us about the commute.
Cool, calm, collected. It's pretty quiet out there overall. Highways seem clear. No major issues on the road to report at this point. But if you do see something, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call. I'll let folks know what you're seeing out there. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, last night in downtown Winnipeg, it was a pretty good game. The Winnipeg Jets, as mentioned, beating the Minnesota Wild 6-3 at Canada Life Centre. But it was also Black History Night at the game. So in partnership with Black History Manitoba, the night paid tribute to Bill Riley, the Jets' first black player who first put on a jersey in 1979 for the Jets. It also featured educational displays. There was cultural cuisine. There was limited edition Jets gear and apparel. The Black History Month Jets logo itself was designed and produced by Zwike, a Winnipeg-based athleisure brand owned and created by Ogo Okumabwa, who has been on our program before, a former athlete himself and also a current full-time entrepreneur. Yesterday on Up to Speed, guest host Chloe Friesen spoke to him before the game.
Can you describe this new Jets logo for us?
You betcha. So we use the traditional Jet silhouette, of course, and try to keep it really true to the brand. And we just added a couple color elements that represent the diaspora, with our red, green, black, and gold, each representing and signifying something strong within the African diaspora. So black being, of course, the people, gold being some of the wealth, green for the wealth and the land of Africa, and then red for unfortunate bloodshed that has kind of some of the injustices that have taken place over the years and sometimes currently. So
it's a classy design, I have to say.
Thank you so much.
How do you want the people who are going to wear this logo tonight? How do you want them to feel when they're wearing it? They're out and about.
I want them to feel the same way they feel when they wear the Jets, blue, gray, and red. I want them to be proud. I mean, really, it's a part of the Jets have gone out of their way to be inclusive and be prideful of the different elements of the game. And I think that we want the same thing from anyone that wears the hoodie, just to be proud of the hoodie, enjoy wearing the hoodie. It represents a strong team and hopefully a strong community. So that's what we're looking for.
What was your reaction to the Jets reaching out to collaborate with your company Zwike on this project?
I mean, for us, it's exciting. I mean, they're the big ticket here in the city, and we're a small upcoming company that's trying to grow, and getting them and hopefully working with them was already something that we would dream about and wanted to do, and we were excited that with Black History Month, Manitoba, they were really willing to do so, and hopefully that leads into other business, not just within the month of February, but throughout the course of the year.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a bit more about Zwike as a brand itself? What inspires your designs?
Yeah, so we are an athleisure brand. Zwike, if you don't know what it means to relax. So in our dialect, both Brian and I are of Nigerian ancestry, and in our dialect of Igbo dialect, Zuike means to relax.
Oh, I love
that. So a lot of we both played sports here in the city. I played for U of M, and he played for UW in the volleyball side, and I was a basketball player. But the greatest moments of our time are not necessarily just on the court or training. It was actually a lot of the time that you take time to relax and play the video games with your friends and hang out with your teammates, and that's really what we kind of wanted the essence of our brand to be about. Community time where you spend with your people and enjoy relaxing, because I loved wearing my sweatsuits when I was in college.
It's the gear you wear on the bus ride to the game, hey?
You betcha.
Yeah.
You betcha.
So speaking of designs, I was looking through the Zuike website. You actually have a special Black History Month apparel line. Can you tell us what that looks like?
Yeah, so this year we have a theme, and within that theme, we decided to highlight 3 individuals that really left their legacy on the world, and that was Viola Desmond and Bob Marley, along with Mr. Nelson Mandela. So we kind of pay tribute to them, and within this line, every year that we do this, we tend to take the funds and put it toward what we have as our Be History Fund. And in our Be History Fund, that money goes to Can You, which is a wonderful organization here in Winnipeg, Manitoba, that takes young students, kids that are progressing and hoping to take on the world by storm, and they help to curate those kids' curiosity and develop them into the next leaders of future generations. So we're pretty excited that we give out some scholarships every year to their program, and we've been able to do it for the last 3 or 4 years. So it's been amazing, and they've been a great group to work with. And we also get some special partners like Newer Private Wealth, the Northwell Group in Winnipeg, Manitoba, here to match some of the funds that we make from this from these sales and contribute to the scholarships that we give out. So it's really exciting. It's really fun. It's a great initiative, and we hope to do it for years to come.
How do you feel about professional sports leagues like the NHL hosting things like Black History Month games?
I mean, I think it's cool. I mean, it's cool to kind of highlight, different cultures and different things. And I think when you think of hockey, you don't predominantly think of, multicultural and a multicultural environment when I was growing up, for sure, where, it's starting to change. You're starting to see the interest, and especially in our communities, they look much different than they did in the past. And a lot more kids and families are really interested in the sport, and great way to grow that is letting us know, hey, yeah, you're welcome to be involved and enjoy it and love it just like everybody else has over a number of years. So having these events are great, but also you want to hope that they're not constrained just to specific months to tick off boxes. It's more of, hey, we want you part of the sport, and that's something that's normal through everybody's day-to-day life.
So that was a conversation between guest host Chloe Friesen, who was sitting in on Up to Speed yesterday, and Ogo Okumboa, who's the owner of Zuike, the brand behind the specialty Black History Night Winnipeg Jets jerseys and logo. You might have seen it last night on the ice. The Jets beating the Minnesota Wild 6-3. And by the way, you can still find that limited edition design at truenorthshop.com. And of course, you can go right to the business owner's website, which I've done many times. I love their stuff. Zuike.com. It's spelled ZUEIKE.com.
Have you visited CBC's Being Black in Canada website? It's an online platform to explore the stories and experiences of Black Canadians from across the country. You'll find relevant news articles and interviews, incredible documentaries and interesting video clips, Black achievement in sports, art and culture recommendations, and so much more. Discover the wide breadth of CBC content celebrating Black Canadians all in one place. Visit cbc.ca/Being Black in Canada today.
6:23 a.m. is the time right now. It's -9 in Winnipeg. It's partly cloudy, and our high today is going to be around -2. Well, next on the program, this week the United Nations top court is holding hearings examining the legality of Israel's occupation of the Palestinian territory. The case follows a request from the UN General Assembly for an advisory decision following a resolution that was adopted in December 2022. The court will look at Israel's policies in the occupied territory of the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem. To talk about it, Michael Link is with us, Professor Emeritus of Law at Western University and former United Nations Special Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in the occupied Palestinian territory. We have reached him in The Hague. He is attending the hearings. Hello there.
Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you for being with us. So take us to the heart of this. What is the specific question the court will consider?
Sure. There are a number of aspects to the questions that have been put to the court. But as you've mentioned, the very heart of the issue is whether or not Israel's 56-year-old occupation has now crossed the bright red line into illegality. Remember that occupations are meant to be temporary, that the occupying power gains no sovereign right to claim any territory in the occupied territory, and they're to be ended really as soon as reasonably possible. When you think of some other comparisons in modern history, the Americans occupied Japan for 8 to 10 years after the Second World War. The Western Allies occupied West Germany for 8 to 10 years after the Second World War. The American-led coalition occupied Iraq for roughly 7 to 10 years. That's kind of the high water benchmark for how long an occupation, to be lawful, should be lasting for. We've had an occupation now for 56 years, and Israel has made territorial claims on both East Jerusalem and on the West Bank. It says it will never allow a Palestinian state, and that it intends to remain forever the sovereign power between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River. So those questions indeed go to the heart of the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians, and this has all been put before the court in this week with this advisory opinion request.
Some people might be thinking to themselves, this territory, as you said, came under Israeli occupation in 1967. Why is the question before the courts now, and how much does the current conflict have to do with that?
Sure. I suspect there's probably several answers to that question, but I think the best single answer is this. The world settled on a peace process known as the Madrid-Oslo process in 1993 with that famous handshake on the White House lawn. And the Oslo process was deemed to deliver a Palestinian independence by 1999 or 2000. And since then, it's been pretty much all downhill for the Oslo process. So there's a growing recognition that Oslo was either being given its last rites, or the Oslo process indeed should be given an obituary, and that the way in which to, try to find a new framework is by insisting upon a complete and total end to the 56-year-old Israeli occupation. And the best way of doing that, in the judgment of a number of countries, was to come to ask this advisory opinion of the court of whether Israel has crossed the bright red line into illegality. And if it has, then should the occupation be ended completely, unconditionally, and immediately. Most of the 50 countries that are appearing before the court this week are adopting some variation of saying, court, find that the occupation is illegal and find that the occupation should end immediately and completely. There are some countries, notably the United States and the United Kingdom, who are making procedural arguments in front of the court to say, don't answer the substance of the advisory opinion because you're only going to complicate this Oslo peace process and drive the parties further apart.
What about Canada? You mentioned UK and the US. How has Canada participated in this case?
Very good question. Canada issued a 5-page, a very thin, I must say, statement back in July to the court as the court was receiving written statements from the various countries that wanted to participate. And indeed, Canada was listed yesterday as with the right to appear to make a half-hour oral arguments in front of the court. It then issued a statement, which I saw earlier on Tuesday, saying that it would not appear and it would simply let its written statement from July stand for it. In essence, what the Canadian argument was, drawing from the written argument, was that for two reasons, the court shouldn't answer the substantive question being asked on the illegality of the occupation. It should decline to go there and should dismiss, the issue on a preliminary basis, saying first, Israel hasn't consented to this process. Therefore, without this consent, the court shouldn't go forward. And second of all, it's not the General Assembly, which indeed had asked for the advisory opinion, but the Security Council of the United Nations that has primary responsibility of this issue. Frankly, as a lawyer, I don't think either argument would have convinced very many judges on the court. The court has never declined to give a substantive answer to an advisory opinion request by any competent body in the United Nations. And I don't think it was going to do that now with these 50 countries and 3 international organizations appearing. This, I should point out, is the largest number of countries and international organizations ever appearing in front of the International Court of Justice on an advisory opinion request.
Well, I understand it'll be 4 to 6 months potentially before we hear a decision on this as this continues. Thank you very much for your analysis today, Mr. Link. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
Michael Link is a professor emeritus of law at Western University. He's former UN Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in the occupied Palestinian territory as well. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us here in Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on CBC, and we have the Business Report with Solomon Israel, who's back this morning. We're going to talk about Wall Street having its eye on a corporation that's become an enormous success in the tech sector. So we'll hear about that after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is -9, partly cloudy. We're going to become mostly cloudy today with a mild -2 this afternoon. A Winnipeg man who was switched at birth 6 decades ago is moving closer to reclaiming his lost Métis identity. About 2 years ago, Edward Ambrose and Richard Beauvais learned they had been sent home with the wrong families from a hospital in Arborg in 1955. Ambrose grew up with a Ukrainian family and learned he actually is Métis. Last week, the Manitoba Métis Federation handed the 68-year-old his citizenship card.
I was officially a Métis. Wishful thinking what I was growing up was not that. I grew up as Ukrainian. And of getting the card, it was pulling me to who I am. That was very emotional for me.
Ambrose says he's building relationships with his biological family and the Métis community, and now wants the Manitoba government to apologize for the hospital mix-up. People in much of southwest Winnipeg are being asked to cut back on their water use as city crews continue trying to fix a leaky sewer pipe at the Fort Garry Bridge. The city's asking people and business owners to conserve water in St. Norbert, Fort Richmond, Richmond West, Waverly West, and Bridgewater, as well as Linden Woods, Linden Ridge, White Ridge, Waverly Heights, and the University of Manitoba area. Evan Erickson lives in Fort Richmond. He says the sewage leak is concerning, but being asked to conserve water is a tall order.
It'd be very tough as we use a lot of water washing our clothes, washing the dishes. So, yeah, I don't know. It would be tough, but I guess we would have to, but I wouldn't like it.
The city's asking people to flush their toilets only when needed, take shorter showers, and run only full loads of laundry and dishes. It expects a bypass system to divert the sewage will fully be operational by the end of the week. Indigenous leaders, advocates, and community members are meeting in Winnipeg to address the need for a national law to protect ancestral burial sites. Jackie Bouvier is a third-generation residential school survivor from northwest Saskatchewan. She has 2 sisters who died at school and are buried there.
That was my mother's dying wish, was to find our baby sisters. There was ground penetration radar done. They announced that there was 95 detections of that cemetery, and 2 of them, I believe, are my sisters, my baby sisters.
Bouvier says they died in the 1920s. She now wants closure and plans to go to the site in the spring to have a ceremony for her sisters. She supports the push for a national law to protect burial sites. City officials say they have already helped some vulnerable people through the new Winnipeg Transit Community Safety Officer Program. It started yesterday. The officers spent their first full day patrolling Graham Avenue's Transit Mall and being visible to the public. Team leader Bob Christmas says they went to work instantly.
We've just started, but we've already handled half a dozen incidents in the first 10 minutes as they stepped off the bus. So
I think great success.
The officers are trained to de-escalate dangerous situations, provide emergency first aid, and help vulnerable people get resources. They also have the authority to arrest and detain people. Syrian state television reports 2 people have been killed by an Israeli airstrike in Damascus. Debris being cleared from a damaged 10-story building in the capital. The neighborhood that was targeted is primarily residential. However, there is a security agency building in that area. Israel has yet to comment on reports that it is responsible for that strike. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. A big night for Gabriel Velarde. Gabriel Velarde in the first period on TSN with the first of 2 goals he would score for the Jets. And he wasn't alone. Singles were added by Mason Appleton, Nino Niederreiter, Kyle Connor, and Sean Monahan, lifting the Jets to a 6-3 win against the Wild last night. Head coach Rick Bowness says it's all about the chemistry building on Velarde's line with Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele.
You can see the confidence growing with them. The puck's moving, they're making great plays, and the puck's going in the net. So we've waited a long time, but again, it's give the guys credit because they stayed with it, and they just need a little time to build some chemistry.
Also having a great night, Laurent Brossoit in net, making 36 saves for the Jets. Winnipeg still in third in the Central Division, just behind Colorado. Next up, the Jets are in Chicago on Friday. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather Walls.
You're welcome.
Well, before we turn to the forecast, Abby, let me just say that I know it was probably a challenging morning for you in South Winnipeg, but your hair's looking fine.
Oh, you feel my pain.
You're being asked to conserve water. You're one of the residents.
Yeah, when I read the article yesterday, I was like, okay, what do I compromise here? My pot of tea or my hair?
What'd you choose?
Half and half.
God. Good answer. What's going on in the forecast today?
Right now, it's currently a mild start in Winnipeg. We are at -9, partly cloudy day. Expect the clouds to stay with us all through the day, and we'll be reaching a high of -2 later on. Now, heading to Brandon, it's misty over there with temperatures around -8. Today will also be cloudy. You'll be seeing that cloudy conditions. Then it will give way for a mix of sun and cloud later as the morning progresses, and then you'll see yourself reaching a high of -3. Good morning, Thompson. A light snow is in the forecast for you. Currently, you are at -24. Expect mainly cloudy skies with that 30% chance of light snow coming your way later. And for folks in Thompson, you'll be seeing a high of -15. But with that wind chill and the breeze you're currently seeing now, it may drop to 28 this morning, and there's a risk of frostbite. So be prepared for that. It's -30 in Churchill. You're currently looking at mostly cloudy conditions, and light snow is expected to start this morning with a high of -23. Now, with the wind chill, it's going to dip to like -38. So also be cautious of a frostbite today. Moving over to Dauphin. Dauphin is at -11, looking at a high of -2. Gimli is at -13, and the high for the day is forecasted to be around -4. Steinbach is at -12. You see a high of 0, and then lastly in Morris, it's currently -9. You see a high of 1. Currently, Winnipeg is at -9.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Well, just before we turn to the commute, I want to mention that while we're talking about water, if you want to call us and let us know how your morning's affected, the listener line 788-3205. Well, let's turn our attention to the commute with Corey.
Well, I was going to say, Abby, I don't live in South Winnipeg. So I've actually, just today, it just so happens I started a business. If people want to come up and have a shower at my place, I'm charging $20, but since you're my colleague, you're my buddy, $15 for you if you want to come and have a guilt-free shower at my place.
He turned his mic off.
Okay, fine. You're lost.
But he's laughing. It'd be a good gig, right? See,
right?
I was thinking, we should bring you tea. What kind of colleagues are we? We didn't bring the man tea.
I know.
Right?
I know.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the commute this morning. You ran in, I'm guessing?
I did run in. Sidewalks were pretty smooth, pretty grippy, pretty nice overall. Lovely run in. And so far, it seems like that's the case on the roads and the highways, everything else as well. But if that's not the case where you are, do give me a call Let me know what you're seeing out there. That number 204-788-3093.
All right. Thank you, Corey Funk.
Thank you.
I want to mention on the water issue, Corey's actually just got off the phone and confirmed that we will have Janice Lukes, who is the city councillor for Waverly West, on the program in the next hour of the show. So we'll ask her more about this. You know, what's meant by it. Any idea how long this might last before this sewage spill can be fixed and that pipe can be fixed. So we'll have that interview for you in an hour. Right now, though, 21 minutes to 7, and Salman Israel is back from the National CBC Business Desk. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So let's start with Wall Street, which has its eyes on NVIDIA. I think I'm saying that right, corporation, which has become an enormous success in the tech sector. But why all the attention on this company?
It all has to do with artificial intelligence. NVIDIA does not do AI directly, but they do design computer chips and graphics processing hardware that is used to power AI applications. So everyone's watching NVIDIA today. This tech company reports earnings for its fourth quarter after markets close. And, you know, in addition to the company itself is seen as kind of a bellwether for the AI sector in general. As you could imagine, the recent AI boom has helped make NVIDIA one of the most valuable publicly traded companies in the world. Its share price has been soaring as it sells more and more of these special processors for AI applications. And that's why investors have such high expectations for this earnings report today from NVIDIA. They want to know if NVIDIA's numbers, the revenue, is equal to the hype around this company. And they want to know if the rapid growth that this company has been experiencing can be sustained in the future. It does seem like some investors might be feeling a bit nervous about what NVIDIA's quarterly report will show today. NVIDIA shares did take a big tumble in trading yesterday. Still worth a lot, though.
To another story, we often talk about how everything seems to be getting more expensive. And now we actually have the latest price hike in the air travel sector. What's going on?
Yeah, this is American Airlines, the latest airline to increase the cost of checking a bag. The U.S. airline said that domestic flyers will now pay $35 to check their first bag. That's if they check it online. It used to be $30. And if you check that bag at the airport, it's going to cost you $40 for your first bag. If you want to check a second bag, that's going to cost $45 for a U.S. domestic flight. If you're an American airline passenger in Canada or on a short-haul international flight, you will also now pay $5 more to check a bag, $35 for your first bag, and $45 for your next bag. For its part, American is saying that they haven't hiked their fees for checked bags in several years. Last time they increased that fee was 2018. It was way back in 2008 when American first introduced a checked bag fee. At the time, it was just $15, which, you know, I think people were probably salty about that at the time, but $15 seems like a deal for a checked bag these days.
Hindsight, right?
Yeah, and American is not the only airline to be increasing these fees. Alaska Airlines and JetBlue have also boosted how much they charge for a checked bag this year.
And finally, one more story before we look at the numbers. Canadian media company Zoomer Media Limited has made another acquisition. What do they buy?
Yeah, Moses Znaimer's Zoomer Media announcing that they have acquired a digital publisher called Curiosity Group. They paid $5 million for this company, paid in cash. Zoomer Media described Curiosity as, quote, one of Alberta's leading digital media publishers, unquote. They said that that Curiosity also operates in some other Canadian markets outside of Alberta. They do so-called hyper-local content. You know, it's kind of like a blog with what's going on in your city, where to eat, where to, go out and catch events, that kind of thing. Apparently, they have almost 4 million daily readers, according to Zoomer. Zoomer Media is trying to grow its target demographic and expand here. You might recall that they originally focused on a kind of middle-aged and older audience, people age 45 and older, but they said that Curiosity's audience is mostly between the ages of 18 and 44, so a bit of a younger crowd there. Zoomer Media has made a bunch of acquisitions in recent years. Earlier this month, they announced they were acquiring CJOS, that's a radio station in Owen Sound, Ontario, and they acquired that from Bell Media.
What is going on with the global financial markets then this morning?
Sure. Asian markets closed mixed today. Hong Kong up more than 1.5%, so big gains there. And Shanghai up about 1%, but Japan's main index closed in the red. European markets also mixed today. Germany and France still trending up right now, but the big index in the UK moving down. The price of oil down slightly, not much happening there, about $76.50 per barrel. The price of gold more or less flat at around $2,040 per ounce. And the Canadian dollar not moving too much this morning. One Canadian dollar worth about about 73.9 cents US.
So you're part of our team, obviously, this week, filling in at the Biz Desk. So we're asking the team this morning, we got this issue with water conservation in Winnipeg. So we're just curious where we all use the most water in the morning.
Oh.
Are you a tea drinker?
Morning.
Coffee? Is it the shower?
Yeah, it would have to be the coffee. I usually shower later in the day, but that's definitely I just can't give up my warm shower. That's my biggest water waster right there.
The water or the coffee early. Yeah, I'm the coffee early. Heather's a long toothbrusher with her fancy schmancy electronic toothbrush.
You don't need much water for that, though.
It's true. Thank you, Solomon. Take care.
Thanks, Marcy.
Solomon Israel with the CBC from the CBC Business Desk with Business News. It is 6:44 right now on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on the app or on YouTube. Good morning, everyone. In Winnipeg, it's partly cloudy. It's -9, and it is schooling number 2, in case you're checking, on this Wednesday, February 21st. It's amazing. Next week, it's going to be March already. A high of -2 in the city of Winnipeg, mainly cloudy today. So unlike yesterday, similar temperature, but different sky condition for us here in the city. By the way, a lot colder up north. Thompson is light snow falling right now, has snow, and it's -24. Well, up next on CBC, Canada needs to update its laws to better protect Indigenous burial sites all across this country. That is what a group of Manitoba First Nations is calling for this week, as you may have been hearing in the news. Manitoba, Kiiwetinowi, Okimakanak, and Sioux Valley Dakota Nation are right now hosting a 3-day gathering in Winnipeg. They're talking about what new laws could look like. They're joined by Kelly Murray, who's the independent special interlocutor for missing children and unmarked graves and burial sites associated with Indian residential schools. She spoke with CBC's Alana Cole here in Winnipeg yesterday.
So we do not have a national legislation in this country to protect the burial sites of our ancestors, of Indigenous remains. In the United States, they do have such a legislation. It's not a perfect law, and we need to maybe learn from the U.S. and from Indigenous people in the United States about what works and what doesn't work there. What we have in Canada is a number of provincial territorial laws that weren't created for the idea of protecting the burial grounds of ancestors of Indigenous people, of children that were buried on Indian residential school grounds. We have laws that aren't being enforced. For example, if a private landowner finds remains on their property, under the law, they're supposed to call the police or the coroner. And what we know is that these laws aren't being followed. And developers, when they find remains, when they're developing grounds, we're learning that, it's a dirty little secret. Don't tell anyone, rebury them, or we're going to stop the development because the law will trigger. So it's really important that we have strong enforcement mechanisms and that Indigenous people have oversight to these legislations and any new legislation that we might create on a national scale. So when we look at all the institutions, not just the Indian residential schools recognized under the settlement agreement, but other institutions where Indigenous children were taken. We know that children were taken to Indian hospitals, they were taken to sanatoria, they were taken to reformatories, and we're learning that children died in those institutions and were not returned home as well. And so they're buried in some cases, the grounds of those institutions. And in some places, they're buried in cemeteries that are actually registered cemeteries, but they're in unmarked graves, mass unmarked graves with 20, 30 other children in the same grave. So the difficulty that we have, obviously, is the provincial laws and territorial laws don't speak to the federal laws that we don't have. And so we don't have a legislation created specifically to protect and give access to the lands. We know that there are communities that want to access lands that are privately owned, and their landowners are not granting access. We have a situation in Quebec where the Mohawk mothers have had to go to court to stop development on lands where they believe Indigenous children are buried to get an injunction. And so we need to find a better way, a better solution than having to go to a colonial legal system to try and stop development on lands where ancestors are buried.
That is Kelly Murray, the independent special interlocutor for missing children in unmarked graves and burial sites associated with the Indian residential schools, speaking with CBC's Alana Cole in Winnipeg yesterday. She is here as part of a 3-day conference. Now, Alana also spoke with Manitoba Keewatin-Nawiokamakanak Grand Chief Garrison Sete.
Well, this conference is important because it has gained national attention. People are here from New Zealand, people are here from the States, all across Canada because they believe in what we're trying to do here. And we believe in the legitimacy of having laws and legislations created to protect our people. So they've come here because they believe in that position, and that's very powerful. I think that once there's remains that are found of ancestors, I think that immediately that site should be protected. I think that anywhere across Canada where there's ancestral graves, that site should be protected immediately to protect it from damage, from desecration, because those laws exist in the United States, and why we don't have that law in Canada is simply unacceptable. We want nations to be able to determine what they want for their ancestors, because not every nation has their own protocol. They all have their own ways of doing things, but we can do both. And I think we should be allowed to do both.
That is MKO Grand Chief Garrison Sete speaking with CBC's Alana Cole yesterday as part of this 3-day conference, which is ongoing today here in Winnipeg. If you want to read more about the story, please go to our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba. It also includes the stories of some others that were there yesterday here in Winnipeg gathering, including a woman from Saskatchewan who talked about finding her sister's burial sites being found and what that meant to her personally. And then also an ongoing issue. You just heard mention of the challenge of when the graves are on private land, how the laws may prevent people from, as put it, finding their ancestors. Both MKO and Sioux Valley have repeatedly asked the provincial government here in Manitoba in recent years for the Brandon Indian Residential School Children's Cemetery, which is located on a private campground near Brandon, to be designated a provincial heritage site under the Heritage Resources Act. So you can read more about that in our web story. Have a look. It's 9 minutes to 7 a.m. now on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app or on YouTube. Good morning, everyone. It's -9 in the city of Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa with Corey Funk, Brad Lillies, and Abby Adeyemi behind the glass today. Well, how are you doing this morning? Did you wake up and get out of bed and spring to action? Or did it take a minute? Did you have to stretch your back out maybe? Do a little bit of toe touching? A lot of people deal with back pain. It's one of the top reasons, in fact, that people visit doctors and other healthcare providers across the country. It's also one of the most common reasons that people miss work. A study that was recently published in the Canadian Medical Association Journal has some positive and also some not great news for people who experience back pain. And that's our medical column today with House Dr. Raj Bhardwaj. Hi there.
Good morning, Marcy.
Man, you have hit a note here.
Yeah.
If you haven't had back pain, someone you know has. Tell us more about this paper. What did they look at?
Yeah, so it was actually a review of other papers from 2011 to 2023, and the authors basically wanted to look at what happens to people with acute back pain. So, do they get better over time? Do they go on to develop chronic back pain or what? So they looked at 95 studies, included a total of about 18,000 people with various kinds of back pain. And when they crunched the numbers, they found that people's back pain generally gets better within 6 weeks, which is good news. But when it doesn't, it tends to stick around for a long amount of time. It often causes a lot of pain and disability, which is bad news. They also found that if you get acute low back pain, then you tend to get it again. So, you get back pain, it gets better. About 70% of people will have a recurrence of their back pain within a year. So they propose that if healthcare workers can do a better job at identifying people who are at higher risk, maybe taking a longer time to get better, and really focus our efforts on those folks, then maybe we can avoid them ending up with the chronic low back pain. Now, there were some limitations to this review, including that it really only applies to people between about 18 and 60, and they had to look at back pain as sort of a diagnosis of its own, and it really isn't in real life. It's a symptom that can be caused by so many different kinds of underlying issues.
Like what? Like what are some of the common things that would cause people to have back pain?
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough one that, we focus a lot of classes in medical school just on back pain. So it's a complicated symptom, but the most common thing I would say is it's due to mechanical problems, mechanical things like muscle strains, ligament strains, tendon issues. That would be the group that is the most common cause of simple low back pain. You can have back pain because of problems with the discs between the bones of the spine. You can have problems with the bones themselves, arthritis type things in the joints of the spine. Some of those things can run in families and affect even relatively young people and give them sort of chronic back pain in their 20s and 30s. But that's rare. There are nerves that come from your spine and travel down your legs, and those can get irritated or pinched, and that can give you back pain, often gives you leg pain more than back pain. And then to confuse things even more, back pain can come from a problem that we don't think of as being sort of in your back, like kidney pain or something like that, kidney stones, for example. So it's understandably scary for a lot of people because they think, geez, I've got this terrible pain. It must be due to a terrible problem. And that's the thing the severity of the pain isn't always related to the seriousness of the problem causing the pain.
Really? So how do doctors diagnose the cause of back pain then?
Yeah, so, most of the time it's about understanding the pain first, right? So you can help us to figure out the cause of your back pain by thinking of the things that I'm going to mention here. So we want to know, first of all, how did this back pain start? Did you wake up with it? Was it the day after you started doing some gardening for the first time? Did it start immediately after you bent over to pick something up? We want to know sort of the onset of it. We also want to know what the pain feels like. Is it dull? Is it achy over a big area? Is it sharp? Is it localized to a specific area? Does it come and go like a spasm, or is it there all the time? Or could you get relief by not moving in certain ways? Or say, nope, it's unrelenting, doesn't matter what I do, but it doesn't get any better at all. And we want to know other things like, does it radiate? Does it start in your low back, but then it seems to run down your leg, or start in your mid back and sort of runs in around the front to your groin? We also want to know, is it associated with other things? Is there numbness or tingling or difficulty with specific movements? All of these are huge clues. But apart from the history, we also want to know about the rest of your medical history. And we also want to do a good physical exam. We want to test your different nerves and different muscles and stuff to see if they could be a cause of the pain or unrelated. But most people don't need any blood tests or MRIs or anything like that to diagnose back pain that has been present for a short time.
When might x-rays or other tests be necessary?
It depends, again, a lot on the story. So if there's a story of trauma, like my back pain started when I got hit by a car, well, then obviously, it makes sense there might be a bone problem, and x-rays or CT scans or something can help us to look for that damage. There are things that make our medical spidey senses tingle that make us think, might need to do some extra stuff in this case. So we refer to those sometimes as red flags, things that need to be addressed more urgently. So things like back pain with fever, or back pain with weight loss, or a history of cancer or IV drug use, or back pain that also gives you nerve problems like numbness and tingling in the groin. And if you have back pain plus you can't control your bowel or bladder anymore, then that's a prompt visit to the emergency department, please, to make sure it's not a spinal problem. If you're over 50, and especially over about 65, and you've never had back pain, and you get a first episode of severe back pain, then that's something that makes our spidey senses tingle as well, because that could be a sign of cancer or, a fracture in your back or something like that. But if you think about the back pain that you've had in the past, it's pretty likely that none of those red flags were part of the pain, because most of the time, even though back pain is very painful, it's not usually caused by something really serious. It doesn't usually have those red flags.
So that is Dr. Bardwaj weighing in on back pain this morning on our medical column. It is 3 minutes to 7 o'clock. Heather Wells is in now with headlines.
Good morning. Not only do they have to endure the smell, but now people in much of southwest Winnipeg are being asked to cut back on their water use as city crews continue to try to fix a leaky sewer pipe at the Fort Garry Bridge. Evan Erickson in Fort Richmond says the sewage leak is concerning, but being asked to cut back on water is a tall order. And the The first day with community safety officers patrolling Winnipeg transit buses is being called a success. 21 safety officers rode downtown routes yesterday. Bus rider Colleen McManus welcomes the officers. She takes the bus every day and says sometimes it can be a little scary. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 7:30.
All right, Heather, thank you.
You're welcome.
So on the spill, the sewage spill and being asked to conserve water in the south, it's now been 2 weeks, as Heather mentioned. 10 neighborhoods affected, thousands of people being asked to conserve water today. We will talk to the councillor, Janice Lukes, for Waverley West in the next hour for more detail on this story. Also, in the next hour of Information Radio, we are going to visit what people think about the new safety officers out on the buses. So that's all coming up in some more detail. -9, partly cloudy in Winnipeg, and Corey has your commute.
Westbound North Perimeter near Pipeline in the median lane. There appears to be a collision. Heard from Matt. Keep right to get around that. Emergency vehicles are on scene. It seems to be backing up all the way towards McPhillips right now. So slow going. Keep right.
All right. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
788-3093 if you want to weigh in on the commute. If you want to weigh in on the water and needing to conserve water and how it's affecting your morning this Wednesday, 788-3205. Different phone number. Same people. Thanks for joining us this morning. Coming up next, World Report on CBC 89.3 FM. Stay with us.
I would never, ever be a pill addict or addicted to opiates.
Belleville, Ontario is a city of 50,000 people. In one 48-hour period, 23 people overdosed there. We'll hear from residents of that city about their state of emergency and what needs to change. That's coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Israel's most powerful allies pushing back against fresh calls for Israel to pull its forces out of the occupied Palestinian territories. The United States is among 10 countries speaking today at The Hague, weighing in on the legality of the Israeli occupation. Freelance reporter Lauren Comato brings us the latest.
Colombia, Cuba, and Egypt all made the case that Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories violates international law. They called it a de facto annexation and asked judges to take a stand towards ending it. But U.S. legal representative Richard Visek argued that calling for an end to the occupation would undermine peace negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians.
This conflict cannot be resolved through violence or unilateral actions. Negotiations are the path to lasting peace. For these reasons, we respectfully encourage the court to carefully calibrate its advice in this proceeding.
He said the only way to achieve an enduring and just peace is to work within the UN's established framework for negotiating a two-state solution. He said Israel's real security concerns were underscored by Hamas's October 7 attacks, and that the ensuing suffering and ongoing hostilities of Israel's campaign in Gaza reinforces the U.S.'s commitment to urgently achieve a final peace within the UN's negotiation framework. As the UN's highest court, he argued, it's the role of judges to help achieve that, and not, as others here have asked, to resolve the entire dispute. Lauren Comato for CBC News, Amsterdam.
Alberta is considering more changes to how students access sexual health education. As Janet French reports, if the Premier's plans go ahead, Alberta will be the first province to ask parents to opt in for children to be in a sexual health class.
We will ensure discussions about gender identity and other sensitive subjects happen at the right time.
Premier Danielle Smith says schools can't assume parents are okay with kids learning about sexual health, gender identity, or sexual orientation. Alberta parents have had the choice to opt kids out of sex education since 2009. Smith now wants Alberta to be the first province where parents opt in. Advocates for comprehensive sexual health say it will leave too many children unprepared because a child lost a permission slip or a parent missed an email. Mary Jane James is CEO of the Sexual Assault Centre of Edmonton.
I don't see a win here. I see a lot of potential loss for students to have the correct information.
Pam Krause of Calgary's Centre for Sexuality says students will turn elsewhere and find questionable information.
People go to the internet and can end up looking at pornography.
Krause says it could mean more teen pregnancies, sexually transmitted infections, and put kids at risk of sextortion. Jeff Park of the Alberta Parents Union supports the changes.
There were gaps in the existing system of parental notification.
Park says teachers are talking about sexual orientation and gender identity at assemblies and on field trips, and parents don't know. The province says legislation will come this fall after more public consultation. Janet French, CBC News, Edmonton.
And Janet has more on this story at cbcnews.ca. It's on our main page. The United Kingdom is sanctioning 6 Russian individuals in response to the death of Alexei Navalny. All of them ran the Arctic penal colony where Navalny died last week. They will be subject to travel bans and asset freezes. The UK is also calling on Russian officials to release Navalny's body to his family. And earlier today, the European Union also approved its 13th package of sanctions against Russia. Nearly 200 new entities and individuals have been added to the existing list. Ukraine urgently needs artillery shells, and Canada is under pressure to start producing more munitions. But until it can do that, Canada is signaling it will work with the Czech Republic to get more artillery shells to Ukraine. Murray Brewster has the details.
Just about everywhere he goes these days, Defense Minister Bill Blair gets asked about ramped-up munitions production in Canada. He has, however, been talking with allies.
I've entered into a memorandum of understanding with one of our European allies, the Czech Republic, with respect to perhaps acquiring munitions that they currently have in their possession that will enable us to acquire those munitions and make them available more rapidly to Ukraine.
Petr Pavel, president of the Czech Republic, last weekend said his country had secured 800,000 artillery rounds in different countries. It needs help from allies to get them to Ukraine. Defense sources tell CBC News that Canada has been looking at the Czech proposal and is prepared to contribute as much as $30 million. There's concern among allies, however, that Canada may use this to continue to defer on ramping up its own domestic production. Bill Blair urges patience.
We'll have more to say in the not too distant future about how we're investing in increased Canadian production of munitions.
Kristen Cianfrani of the Canadian Association of Security and Defense Industries says her concern is how politics is creeping into the debate.
We're seeing these things become wedge issues, Ukraine becoming a wedge issue.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says a shortage of munitions was one of the reasons his troops withdrew last weekend from the strategic eastern city of Avdiivka, and the Russians are taking advantage of delays in aid to Ukraine. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
In India, farmers drive tractors and bulldozers near the Punjab-Haryana border. They are threatening to use the machinery to tear down cement barricades set up by police.
We are trying to break the stoppage which made in front of us, and we will cross the border today.
This man is one of hundreds of farmers who marched to the border last week demanding better compensation for their crops. But talks with the government earlier this week have failed. The farmers want a guaranteed minimum price for certain goods. They say they will remain at the border until all of their demands are met. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe has made a trip to India to promote trade. Moe says he wants to increase investment in the province and showcase its food and energy sectors. Tensions between Canada and India are still high. Last September, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau accused India of being involved in the murder of a Sikh activist in BC. New Delhi continues to deny the accusation. Alberta is preparing for an early start to this year's wildfire season. The province had a record-breaking season last year, and now lower snowpacks and dry weather forecasts are forcing officials to move up their plans. The CBC's Julia Wong explains.
The snow is sparse in Whitecourt, Alberta. That, coupled with dry conditions and warmer than usual temperatures, is fueling concern this wildfire season could be a rough one.
We are declaring an early start to the 2024 wildfire season.
So Alberta's season started yesterday instead of the typical March 1st. Alberta's Forestry Minister Todd Loewen.
This past year, when we look back, the fire started earlier than expected.
In 2023, thousands of people were forced out of their homes because of encroaching flames. 2.2 million hectares ultimately burned, the worst season in the province's history. Contracts for crews and equipment are starting 2 weeks early, and Alberta Forestry is asking for money for an additional 100 firefighters.
Well, I think we're going to be more prepared than we were last year for sure.
Alberta Wildfire Executive Director Bernie Schmidt on what people can expect this spring.
And that is very difficult to predict. El Nino is predicted to slacken off here in the next little while. What that's going to do is change the weather patterns coming into Alberta.
The opposition NDP say the province would have been better off if it did not need to worry about hiring at the start of every season. Alberta NDP forestry critic Heather Sweet.
We wouldn't be in this situation today if we had year-round firefighting.
On top of that, the Alberta government is again asking people with relevant experience or heavy equipment to volunteer and support wildfire crews. Julia Wong, CBC News, Whitecourt, Alberta.
On a dark desert highway, cool wind in my hair.
Hotel California, obviously one of the Eagles' biggest hit. Don Henley wrote the song in the 70s. He jotted down lyric ideas on a yellow-lined notepad. The song was released. It was huge. And somewhere along the way, Henley said those yellow-lined pages were stolen. Fast forward to today, a rare book dealer, a former Rock and Roll Hall of Fame curator, and a memorabilia seller are due to appear in court on criminal charges for conspiring to sell those pages. They didn't steal them, but prosecutors say that doesn't matter. They knew the manuscript was stolen. The three men are fighting the charge, trying to win the case, because a piece of musical history like that could be very, very valuable. And that is World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us on CBC's Information Radio, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. Going to be a cloudy day, but a mild one. Well, you might be starting your day with a shorter shower, or maybe you've skipped it altogether if you're in South Winnipeg. The biggest sewage spill in at least a decade has now dumped 221 million litres into the Red River in our city. This morning, residents, thousands of you in 10 neighbourhoods in South Winnipeg, are being asked to conserve water. We're going to talk to Waverley West Councillor Janice Lukes about more specifics about what is going on and how long this might last, and also in the long term, how city infrastructure can be improved. So stay tuned for that. If you want to call and you're affected by this, 788-3205. In addition, this hour on the show today begins the largest single elimination basketball tournament in Canadian university basketball history. And it will be happening in Winnipeg. We'll tee up the games in the tournament. That's at 7:40. Right now, let's turn our attention to Heather Wells, who has developments on other news stories. Good morning.
Good morning. A man who was switched at birth more than 60 years ago says he is moving closer to understanding who he is. About 2 years ago, Edward Ambrose learned he and another man had been switched at birth at a hospital in Arborg in 1955. Ambrose grew up with a Ukrainian family and learned he's actually Métis. He says it was emotional when he received his Métis citizenship card last week. He is now getting to know his actual birth family, and he wants the Manitoba government to apologize for that hospital mix-up. Indigenous leaders, advocates, and community members are meeting in Winnipeg addressing the need for a national law to protect ancestral burial sites. We're going to hear from a woman whose two sisters who died in residential school and are believed to be buried at a Saskatchewan site. We'll hear what she is hoping to find out in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby Adiemi's in with our Wednesday forecast.
Good morning once again. Right now, we're seeing an overcast in the city of Winnipeg. The temperature is actually sitting still at -9 degrees. It's a breeze that we get that light breeze out there. Looking ahead today, we're going to be seeing mainly cloudy conditions with a high of -2 degrees. And if we look towards the night, we're expecting that partly cloudy conditions to stay with us, and then it will get clear near midnight, and the temperature will be dropping to a low of -9 degrees. Looking at Brandon is misty. Churchill is actually seeing mostly cloudy conditions, and Thompson is also mostly cloudy with light snow. But Winnipeg right now, we are at -9.
All right, thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
Corey Funk, news in the commute?
Yeah, I got a bunch of calls during the news break here about a collision on the westbound North Perimeter just before Pipeline Road. It's in the median lane. There's emergency crews on scene, and it's getting very backed up right now all the way to McPhillips, is what I heard from Matt and from Hugo and another caller as well. You can get through in the curb lane, but people are trying to sneak around still by taking the shoulder as well, but it's maybe not the best call, seeing as there might be emergency vehicles trying to get through there too, so that might block their way. So just be patient, take that curb lane. You can get by, but it is very, very slow going. That's the westbound North Perimeter near Pipeline Road. Also, Jeff with a G called westbound Notre Dame near Pearl. You lose your center lane due to construction, so stay left or right. That may catch some folks off guard. But if you see anything else out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
7:14 a.m. is the time right now. Well, let's keep talking about the commute because yours might have some extra visitors this morning hanging around, the bus stops, that is, or maybe on the bus. Transit riders and users in our city may have been noticing some new figures already patrolling downtown stops. That is because Winnipeg has now just officially launched the new community safety teams. 21 safety officers were out on the job for the first time yesterday. Probably see them out there this morning again. And we wondered how riders feel about it. CBC's Cameron McLean had a chance to speak to some, including one named Brad.
Or how did you feel about safety on buses?
Stay off the bus at night.
Do you think that having safety officers on the buses will make it safer at night?
No idea.
Had you ever seen anything or anything ever happened to you that made you feel unsafe?
Things I've seen in this area at night. I tend to stay home unless I have to go out.
How often do you ride the bus?
Twice a week at least. Sometimes more, depends on whether I got doctor's appointments or not.
Any thoughts about it? Do you think it's a good idea or a bad idea?
I think it should have always been there. The way some of the people are, especially, with all these homeless and whatnot. I mean, I look down here and all I see is people walking around with, 2-liter beers under their arm. Or they're sitting on a bench over here, stuffing needles in their arms. This used to be a really good shelter. Now, for someone like me, it doesn't do me any good whatsoever. I've got a bad heart, bad lungs. Not supposed to be out in the extreme cold, and where do I go?
Do you hope that it makes a difference?
I hope. Well, also it'd be nice if the city could get these shelters back the way they're supposed to be. This used to be a heated shelter, but I can understand why they're not fixing them, but this doesn't help people like me.
Colleen McManus.
Andrew McManus.
How do you feel about the community safety teams going to be out patrolling on buses starting today?
I actually very happy about that. I mean, we take the bus every day for work, and sometimes it gets a little scary for us as well as the driver, as of lately. So it's actually, I'm very happy they're out there. I'm very, very happy they're out there. We've seen bus drivers getting attacked. We've seen other passengers getting attacked by passengers. We've seen people get on the bus and then start smashing things. And this is daily. It's just sad that it's happening.
So the officers will be trained in de-escalation techniques and first aid. They'll be helping try to direct people, but they'll also have the power to arrest people. How do you feel about them being able to arrest and detain people?
I think that's needed right now. Bus drivers' safety is in so much jeopardy right now. I mean, their life is in danger every time they open the door. They can't say, no, you can't come on because I don't think you're safe. They let everybody on. So their life goes in jeopardy every time they open the door. I think it's about time they actually got somebody there that's going to stop this.
Yeah, it's a really good idea because it means a lot of times, people get too close and then they start arguing, and then you don't know what's going to happen. Then the bus driver still has to deal with these people. And there's only so much the transit guys can do. I mean, if they call them, then that's the only time they know about it. It's real good that they got these new security on the buses now. I mean, they put the shields for the bus driver, but then people can still reach around that and hit them and do whatever. It's not really protecting anything.
That was CBC's Cameron McLean speaking to Winnipeg Transit riders about their new community safety teams that are now out in Winnipeg. Robert Christmas is the inaugural team lead of the Winnipeg Community Safety Team. He's been on the program a number of times in the lead up to this, but he spoke yesterday to reporters at the official scrum at the bus corridor down on Graham Avenue in the city.
Well, we've just started, but we've already handled half a dozen incidents in the first 10 minutes as they stepped off the bus. So great success. You know, we've done a lot of training, a lot of preparation, a lot of logistics coming up to this moment, and we're just extremely happy to start playing a part in helping downtown and Winnipeg and transit community safety. We're out walking around the Graham corridor and around the downtown area. We're deployed in small teams to various locations. Eventually we'll be stepping on the buses and dealing with incidents, but for today we just wanted to get out and be seen and start acclimatizing the team to the environment. First of all, reacting to what we come across out in the street especially, but we'll be responding to things that are coordinated through the Transit Communications Center. We have an officer there. We have communications between the whole team, and we'll be taking a team-oriented approach, problem-solving oriented, and hopefully we'll be able to direct and focus that to some ongoing issues and start working on our partnerships with the community agencies that are out here. There was one person in a crisis and appeared to be somewhat of a domestic dispute. They were able to intervene and resolve with talking. They've dealt with some people in bus shelters in the area. Us reacting to something just by virtue of being present and out there, and that's how a big part of the strategy we envision is giving a sense of safety and dealing with incidents as they arise right in front of us.
Robert Christmas is the inaugural team lead of the Winnipeg Community Safety Team. Now, to round out our first day coverage, and this morning you might be seeing these teams out there, Mayor Scott Gillingham also weighed in and spoke to CBC's Cameron McLean.
This is really important for transit across the city of Winnipeg. You know, I trust that it gives transit riders greater confidence in riding the bus, and the transit operators as well. I mean, that's their workspace, so we want to make sure that that's a place of safety for them so they can do their jobs without interruption. I think it's going to take a little bit of time. This is something that's new, but I believe that, you know, when a bus rider gets on the bus and sees one of our community safety officers there in their high-vis yellow, I think just even the presence of these individuals on our bus will bring a measure of confidence. They don't have a mandate right now to enforce fares. Really, the focus is on the health and well-being of people on the bus and making sure that the bus is a safer space for everybody. Right now, the focus is on routes that go in and out of and through the downtown. So I don't have the numbers of those routes right now. I think it'll be a bit of a trial and error for our teams, but Bob Christmas, under his very excellent leadership, really has a focus of where he wants to deploy. I'm very pleased with the timeline. It took from concept to deployment. So really this got all done within 11 months, inside of a year.
So that was Mayor Scott Gillingham in conversation with CBC's Cameron McLean. If you want to read more about the rollout for all of this, which was officially launched yesterday, you can read online at cbc.ca/Manitoba about the transit safety officers. And if you are a transit rider, maybe you're at a bus stop this morning or you're on the bus going, oh, who's that? Give us a call. Let us know what you think and whether or not this will enhance your feeling of safety or your actual safety using the buses in Winnipeg. I'm always plugging our listener line, but we really do like to hear from you. 788-3205.
Frequencies with Errol Nazareth.
The world is alive with sound, whether across the street or across the pond, from back home or in your own backyard. Every place has a sound and every person has a story. Discover songs and stories from people and communities across Canada and around the world.
Frequencies with host Errol Nazareth. Episodes available on demand on the CBC Listen app.
7:22 a.m. I want to mention that in an hour from now, after 8 o'clock, we have ongoing coverage of our series on youth violence. We are going to talk this morning to hear part of a conversation, with the superintendent of the Winnipeg School Division. I spoke with Matt Henderson yesterday at length, so we will play you the bulk of that conversation. That is because two teen girls that one of our producers met at an overnight city drop-in shared they have not been in school this year. They are both students from the Winnipeg School Division, and the superintendent has been really leaning into the series and has been in discussion also with other educators and principals about it. So we'll find out more about his reaction to this in the backdrop of the series, but also of how he says he's trying to culturally change the division, make some changes. So we'll hear more about that. That's after 8. Right now, though, it's time for a little bit of music from local artist Kelly Badeau. This is Hypnotizing.
Waking up to your halo, like you're some kind of angel. That sparkle in your eyes. Yeah, I don't even need sunlight. Everything that you do, you got me smiling when I'm wrapped up in you. I'm in paradise, yeah. Every time we're together, it's so mesmerizing. You are hypnotizing. The way you see right through me, the way you know what I'm thinking. You got some kind of something, I can't put my finger on it. Makes me love you like crazy. Everything that you do, you got me smiling when I'm wrapped up in you. I'm in paradise, yeah. Every time we're together, it's so mesmerizing. You are hypnotizing. You are hypnotizing. Baby, you are hypnotizing. Round and round we go. I wanna dance until I'm dizzy. Round and round we go. I've never felt so amazing. Never felt so amazing. Everything that you do, you got me smiling when I'm wrapped up in you. I'm in paradise, yeah. Every time we're together, it's so mesmerizing. Everything that you do, you got me smiling when I'm wrapped up in you. I'm in paradise, yeah. Every time we're together, it's so mesmerizing.
Every time I hear Kelly Bado sing, and I've had the pleasure of hearing her in person as well, I just think pretty. I think her voice is just so silky and beautiful. And her music, always with influences from Saint Boniface, Francais, also her African heritage, and right out of Manitoba. Artist to be proud of, Kelly Bado with Hypnotizing. Well, I don't know if we'd call the Jets' performance pretty or gritty or some other word. We'll leave that to Scott Reguer this morning. Hi.
Hypnotizing, maybe.
Yeah,
for
or
some.
maybe. So they got called up by the coach, right? You were playing this yesterday. They're looking for
Yeah.
better defense against Minnesota. Is that what got it done last night in your view?
Well, in part, Rick Bowness, as you referred to, called out his team's poor play after they lost to the Flames earlier this week. He was looking for a better showing, specifically at even strength, Marcy. And in that sense, the Jets accomplished that, giving up just one goal at even strength in what ended a 6-3 victory. Also of note, Gabriel Velarde scored twice on the power play, so Winnipeg in their last 11 chances with the man advantage have scored 6 times. Pretty good, especially since they'd gone 0 for 22 in the prior man advantage opportunity. So Bowness credits this recent run of form to having his top power play guys together, Velarde along with Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele.
You know, we've said all along that from the start of camp through, like, we just didn't have a chance to put Gabe and Casey and Mark together because of all the injuries. So, and obviously Sean's been a perfect fit. You can see the confidence growing with them. The puck's moving, they're making great plays, and the puck's going in the net.
There, that's the coach Rick Bowness. The Jets have today off, Marcy, before they take on Chicago tomorrow night.
What's the latest from curling, the Tournament of Hearts in Calgary?
Well, mixed results, Marcy, for Manitoban rinks. Jennifer Jones dropped her only match of the day to Rachel Homan of Ontario. Maybe the last time we see those two legends of the sport play each other because of Jones's pending retirement. Kate Cameron split her games, losing to Homan before rebounding against the Northwest Territories. And Carrie Anderson down Saskatchewan, taking a firm grasp of second place in her pool. But possibly the biggest winner yesterday, Marcy, was Caitlin Laws. who beat Corinne Brown of BC and kept her playoff hopes alive in so doing. With a record of 2-3, Laws is going to need to win out to have a shot at the playoffs. Now, this is not Caitlin's first trip to the Scotties, but it is just her second time at the Bonspiel skipping a team. Laws said that inexperience has contributed to the slow start they've had.
We're all really strong competitors and we want to win. But the great thing about this team is we are a new team. We are learning. I've probably only skipped 60 games in the last 12 years. So there's a lot to learn. And we're coming together as quick as we can with everyone having babies and just figuring out motherhood as well.
All four teams are back on the ice today facing one another. Kate Cameron against Jennifer Jones at 2:30 and then Einarson up against Laws. That one will go at 7:30.
And let's warm things up a bit. What were the talking points as the full Blue Jays team met for the first time yesterday in Florida?
Well, that Vladdy has no hard feelings, Marcy, over his recent arbitration case. Guerrero Jr. won it when a panel decided his performance warranted the $20 million a season he was seeking, and not the mere $18 million the Jays argued he was worth. In his first public comments since the decision, Vladdy, with a big smile of his, said, that's just part of the business, and I'm ready to go for the season. Also ready to go, the Jays' biggest offseason acquisition, Justin Turner. The red-bearded Turner, who's likely to be Toronto's primary designated hitter, only signed a deal at the end of January, but at least he signed a deal. Many, including former Cy Young winner Blake Snell and past MVP Cody Bellinger, have not yet signed. And some say that's because of collusion between the owners to keep spending down. Here's what Turner said about that.
It's just frustrating, I think. I think it's frustrating for the guys in the free agency class. I think it's frustrating for a lot of teams around the league trying to figure out where some of these guys are going to go. And it's kind of, I don't know, a little bit of a black eye on baseball. You have all these guys that are all-star, Cy Young, batting title, Rookie of the Year guys on the free agent market, and they're having a hard time finding a job. I don't think it's a good look.
So with all this going on or not going on, the Jays get ready for their first spring training game Saturday, Marcy, against the Phillies. Go Jays, go, right?
Go Spring, go. Go baseball. All right, thanks, Scott.
Okay.
Still ahead, we're going to keep talking sports because starting today in Winnipeg, the largest single elimination basketball tournament in Canadian university basketball history. So stay tuned. That's after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is -9. It's going to be a cloudy day in Winnipeg, slight breeze, and a high of -2. An ongoing sewage spill means short showers and limited flushing for people in southwest Winnipeg this morning. CBC reporter Megan Ketchison is near the Fort Garry Bridge and joins us live. Megan?
Well, the city is calling on people to use cottage rules when they're using water right now in the city, and that is because of a sewage leak that has been going on since early February. This is a major sewer connection that the city has been working to bypass since February the 7th, and there was a leak that started back in November, and it's been going ever since, spilling 221 million liters of untreated sewage into the Red River. Now, what the city is asking people who live south of this area and also west of the Red River is basically to limit your showers, only do full loads of laundry or dishes, avoid flushing if you don't have to. And this is taking in a large area, including Linden Woods, Linden Ridge, the University of Manitoba, and Fort Richmond, where Evan Erickson lives. He says the sewage leak is concerning, but being asked to conserve water is difficult.
It'd be very tough as we use a lot of water washing our clothes, washing the dishes. So, yeah, I don't know. It would be tough, but I guess we would have to, but I wouldn't like it.
So the city is asking people, at least for the next few days, to be able to limit their water use just to try and keep the water from flowing into the Red River. Reporting live, Megan Ketchison, CBC News.
Thanks so much, Megan. A man who was switched at birth more than 60 years ago says he is moving closer to understanding who he is. About 2 years ago, Edward Ambrose learned he and another man had been switched at birth at a hospital in Arborg in 1955. Ambrose grew up with a Ukrainian family but has learned he's actually Métis. He received his citizenship card from the Manitoba Métis Federation last week.
The grief of what went through, that'll always be there. You'll never walk away from that. But
for now that I know who I am and I know who my biological sisters and brothers are like, so it's a step forward.
Ambrose wants the Manitoba government as a next step to apologize for the hospital mix-up. In a statement, Health Minister Uzoma Asaguera says the province recognizes the devastating impacts caused in this case. Asaguera says the government looks forward to communicating with both men privately in the near future. The first day with community safety officers patrolling on Winnipeg transit buses is being called a success. 21 officers rode downtown routes yesterday. They are trained to de-escalate dangerous situations, provide emergency first aid, and help vulnerable people get resources. Bus rider Colleen McManus welcomes the safety officers.
I actually very happy about that. I mean, we take the bus every day for work, and sometimes it gets a little scary for us as well as the driver.
Safety is an issue for Sean Berman, a former transit inspector, something he knows well.
It always seemed like there was a bit of a gap in between what we could do and what needed to be done, and I believe this team kind of bridges that gap and allows us to better serve the citizens of Winnipeg.
The Union for the Transit Drivers says its members are cautiously optimistic the safety officers will take some of the stress out of their jobs. Indigenous leaders, advocates and community members are all meeting in Winnipeg to talk about better protection for ancestral burial sites. Jackie Bouvier is a third-generation residential school survivor from northwest Saskatchewan. She has two sisters who died at school and are buried there. She says her mother's dying wish was to find their graves.
We think we know where they're buried. They were passed away in 1920s, so they can't be DNA done. So what I plan on doing is having a ceremony and a closure. That will be the closure.
Bouvier says she supports the push for a national law to protect burial sites. The Winnipeg Jets bounced back in a big way last night with a high-scoring game against Minnesota.
White hot.
Those crowds were loving it, and Gabriel Velarde was having a night. His second goal on TSN as the Jets doubled a wild 6-3. Also getting on the board singles by Mason Appleton, Nino Niederreiter, Kyle Connor, and Sean Monahan. Jets head coach Rick Bowness.
We need offense from our defense. They got to get pucks down there, and when they do, they got to have bodies there, and you got to have some puck luck, and we got it.
It wasn't just the goal scorers, but the goal savers. Laurent Brossoit in goal, stopping 36 shots for the Jets. Winnipeg still in third in the Central Division, just behind Colorado. And the Jets hit the road. They're in Chicago on Friday. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into our regional forecast now from CBC with Abby Adiyemi.
Good morning once again. It's -9 and partly cloudy in the city. Expect mostly these cloudy conditions to stay with us all through the day, and we're reaching a high of -2 later. Over in Brandon and the Westman region, it's mostly misty there with the temperatures around -8. Today will be cloudy, and it's going to give way for a mix of sun and cloud later, reaching a high of -3. Good morning, Thompson. Light snow is in the forecast for you. Currently, you are at -24. Expect mainly cloudy skies today. Then a chance of light snow will come your way, and we'll be seeing a high of -15. But there's a risk of frostbite because of the wind condition there, which makes it feel like -28. Currently -30 in Churchill. We are looking at mostly cloudy conditions, and then light snow is expected to start later this morning. The high for today will reach around -23. That part of the region also has a warning of frostbite, so you might want to take it easy. Darwin is at -11. Gimli is at -12. Going to the forecast says you're going to see a high of -4 later. In Steinbach, it's an overcast there. Temperatures at -11. Morris is at -8, and Winnipeg currently at -9.
All right, thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
Corey Funk, we have a couple issues here. At least we did before the news. One on the perimeter, right?
Yeah, so got a bunch of calls just after 7 o'clock, so may very well still be an issue. Westbound North Perimeter, just before Pipeline Road in the median lane, there's been a collision. There were emergency vehicles on scene, may very well still be there, blocking the median lane. You can get around on the curb lane, but that is causing pretty big backups. As far as McPhillips, I heard from Matt, from Hugo, it could be backed up more. I'd love to get an update on that to know if that's cleared or what people are seeing there. Just be patient. Just wait to go through on that curb lane as well. Got a call from Jeff, westbound Notre Dame. You lose your center lane just right near Pearl to construction. So keep left or right to get around that. That may catch some folks off guard. So one other thing to keep an eye out for, Kingsway both ways between Guelph and Wilton are closed for sewer work right now. So if you're heading down Kingsway between Guelph and Wilton, you can't. It's because that's closed for sewer work. If you see anything else going on out there, give me a call on that CBC commuter line. If you're walking, biking, driving, I'll let know folks know what you're seeing. 204-788-3093.
All right. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, one of the top things affecting people this morning is, of course, the thousands of people in South Winnipeg, 10 neighborhoods as mentioned, who are being asked to conserve water. We heard Megan Ketchison out live in the city this morning. We will talk to Janice Lukes, who's the area councillor for one of those neighborhoods being affected, Waverly West. That's still ahead this half hour. Some of you are writing to us online. Christine Meredith saying it's incredibly sad that residents and the wider Winnipeg community isn't more supportive of using less water in this circumstance. So perhaps she's been hearing people who are saying, despite the city requesting this, they're not doing it. And then she looks at the issue. She says 135 liters of raw sewage is horrific. And that number actually was from February, earlier in the month. The number this morning, if you look at what's been spewing out into the Red River, is 221 million liters, as we heard on the news. But she says if this was backing up into your basement, you would reduce your water. But when we can't, quote unquote, see it, it's okay. It's sad. So Christine, obviously, if in that area, the city would be conserving water based on what she's written there, but saying she's hoping others are doing it as well. We're going to talk to Janice Lukes, as mentioned, coming up in this half hour. Right now, though, let's turn our attention back to sports, because as I mentioned before the news, the Canada West men's basketball tournament does start today in the city over at the University of Manitoba. The winner of the single elimination tournament will claim the title of the best in the West. CBC's Jim Agapito went to a U of M Bison's practice and got to talking to Coach Kirby Shep about the road to victory.
Yeah, start up top, cut through the lane. Gray's coming off the back. Strong.
Kirby Shep, men's basketball coach, University of Manitoba. I think it's a huge event for not only university sport, but our sporting community in general, right? It's the first ever in Canadian history where we've hosted a 12-team playoff tournament, single elimination knockout, very similar to U.S. March Madness style. This is teams playing for a right to go to national championships. It's all the best teams in the Western Canada. It's win or go home. So there's a lot of pressure on the line starting Wednesday and Thursday here at Investors Group Athletic Center.
And it's all the teams in Manitoba. So you have Brandon, you have the U of W, you have the Bisons. Tell me, there's a little bit of rivalry here in Manitoba. What does it mean for a win against them or to win this tournament?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question there's some rivalry, but we don't play either of those teams right off the bat. All three of us have very good competitive teams, so I think you're going to see some great basketball, not only of local teams, but also across Canada. So University of Victoria is the number 1 ranked team in the country. UBC is the number 4 ranked team in the country. So we have some very, very good basketball going to be played here this week.
What have you been doing, to establish yourselves as a team that could win this tournament? What have you been doing with the players? How have you been running practices?
This time of year we're tapering a little bit and sort of just getting ready in competition mode, but obviously we've been going all year long, and it's guys are ready to go, and we're certainly prepared for any team that we could play. It's been a long season here getting to this point, and we're ready to go.
Obviously last year, you lost against the U of W team. If you do meet them, how would you win that game?
Yeah, I mean, I think any game's going to be very similar to that. Certainly our game on Thursday, versus whoever it's going to be, is going to be a great crowd, great environment, and we're just focused on us playing our best basketball rather than focusing on the opponent as much. And our guys, certainly from that experience last year, I think are more prepared and more ready to go.
What do you tell the guys before a game?
It's same as any kind of game. You're really just focused on our game plan, on executing what we want to do to perform at our highest level. All of our preparation to this point has led us up to this moment, and it's not so much about the moment, but about all the preparation that you've done sort of in the year and years leading up to this point.
I'm Simon Hildebrandt. I play for the Manitoba Bisons, number 2. I'm a forward from Winnipeg. I think we've got a really good team this year. You know, we've been good all year, so I think with the home crowd, home court advantage, I think we definitely have a good chance at winning it all.
Simon, in terms of practicing, getting into the mindset of a player, going to a tournament like this, what do you do? Like, how do you prepare for something like that?
Just take it one day at a time. Try to treat it like any other practice. Don't look too far into the future, take it one game at a time.
You've also had experience with the Sea Bears. How does that experience bring you to like a game like this?
I was grateful enough to be able to play in some big games this summer, so hopefully that experience helps me calm the nerves a little bit heading into these games.
Your team lost, unfortunately, to the U of W last year. Now I'm thinking, in terms of what you would do if you get to play them again in a situation like that, what would you do?
I mean, like, they're on the other side of the bracket, so we would only play them in the finals, but every time we play U of W, regardless of what happened last time we play them, it's going to be a good game. Like, we're all pretty close, like, off the floor, but as soon as you get on the floor, but both of us definitely want to win a little bit more than any other game. It's tough, and especially in a tournament like this where you're playing back-to-back games or 3 games in 4 games, or some of these teams even 4 games in 5 days. Like, it's tough on the body. Like, you get sore, you get tired, you just got to keep pushing through. You got to persevere.
How do you push through if your body is feeling all sorts? Like, what do you do?
I mean, that starts like at the beginning of the year, making sure you're always trying to eat healthy, trying to stretch after practice, stay lifting to keep your body used to that. It's like a whole year process. It's probably too late to just start right before playoffs.
Strong! Here.
Before a game, mentally prepare. What do? Do you have any rituals? Do you have any things that you do?
Nothing too crazy. You always just take like a pregame nap at some point, like in the early afternoon, like 30 minutes to an hour. Just try to wake up, move around a little bit. Don't just kind of lay in bed all day before the game.
Your first game's on Thursday, correct?
Yeah.
What can people expect from your team?
We're gonna play hard, for all 40 minutes. It's gonna be a great game no matter who we play. It's such a weird year in the conference. Any one of these teams in the conference can beat anybody. So I think regardless of who it is, it's gonna be a great game. It's gonna be some of the best athletes in college athletes in Canada. Playing for it all.
What would it mean to win this championship?
It'd be huge. The first time the whole tournament's been in Winnipeg. Last year we came so close to making nationals and winning it all. So now we got home court advantage. I think it'd be unbelievable. I think the basketball community in Winnipeg and Manitoba as a whole has always been unbelievable and huge. I think it really got broadcasted and shown that when the Sea Bears came, that basketball community in Winnipeg, it really is something special. Now people are starting to realize that we have such an awesome group of people, of kids, adults, teenagers. So I think if people come show up and we can get a big crowd, it just reinforces that. Come watch some great basketball. This tournament, the first time it's happened, all in Winnipeg. I don't know when it's going to happen again. We're going to see this kind of level of college basketball in the city all at once.
So if you're a basketball fan, or if you're, have always been, or whether you're a new fan, got excited by the Sea Bears, looking for more action, you can check it out. It starts today, that tournament. It was CBC's Jim Agapito out there speaking at practice to University of Manitoba basketball player Simon Hildebrandt, as well as Coach Kirby Shep. So the tournament begins today. It runs through Sunday, so lots of opportunity to check out the action in the games. For more specific information, you can visit the Bison's website. It's gobisons.ca.
A construction worker gets into a sticky situation.
Strong enough to hold this man suspended in midair.
A beetle plows through the snow.
Have you ever wondered how the man who drives a snowplow drives to the snowplow?
And a gorilla attempts to level some luggage. Seeing is believing. The power of demonstration commercials on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly. Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
So how are we doing, everybody? Last week, full week of February here. It's going to be March already, into next week. It's 7:46 a.m. It is Wednesday, February 21st, school day 2. And in Winnipeg right now, partly cloudy downtown, -9. It's bright out there, but we're actually not going to see sun today. It's going to be mostly cloudy, we expect, and a high right around -2. It is much colder up north. In Thompson, it's -24. Well, coming up after 8 o'clock to serious matters. He used words like brutal and devastating to hear. Statements and words from the superintendent of the Winnipeg School Division in reaction to 2 teenage girls who told CBC they've been out of class in his division for about a year.
Kids have been getting the impression, not only Winnipeg School Division, but other divisions as well, where they're not welcome. They don't feel like they belong. And in this particular case, we failed these kids.
We're going to hear from Matt Henderson after 8 o'clock about what he's trying to change to improve the system and about the role of adults and educators as our series on youth violence continues. Stay tuned with us. It's a CBC exclusive story. It's 13 minutes to 8 o'clock now. And next on the show, as you have been hearing in the news, the city is asking residents in southwest Winnipeg to take shorter showers this morning and conserve water overall. 10 of your neighborhoods are affected. St. Norbert, Fort Richmond, Richmond West, Waverly West, Bridgewater, Linden Woods, Linden Ridge, White Ridge, Waverly Heights, and the University of Manitoba. So you likely have understood the cause. Over the past 2 weeks, 221 million litres of raw sewage has poured into the Red River from a broken pipe off of Abenochimikinaw. Now, that's the equivalent, that sewage leak, of 88 Olympic-sized swimming pools. And it's still spewing. Janice Lukes is with us, councillor for Waverly West, to talk about the water conservation this morning. Hi there.
Good morning.
So how was your morning? You skip your shower?
Well, no, I had a little shower today, so.
What would you say to residents about the water conservation and what you want them to, or asking them to do?
Sure, we're just asking them to slow the flow, basically, to conserve water, avoid washing their cars, waiting till the dishwasher is full, actions that can preserve water.
So shorter showers, maybe skipping the things that use a lot of water, as you said.
Yeah. We think this will be fixed by the weekend, hopefully. So, the residents of Southwest Winnipeg, they're some of the most resilient people I know. They've come from countries where there's no running water. A lot of the residents are very used to conserving water. So, and they care about the environment. And I know that when this message reaches them, there's been a lot of good media coverage on it, that they will in turn do what it takes to slow the flow.
What are you hearing already from constituents and businesses in Southwest Winnipeg about this?
Well, I do post things on social media, and you do get some interesting characters saying things, but honestly, I haven't had a lot of pushback at all. And I think people realize that if they can do their part, they will. Because what's happening is really, it's a disaster what's happening. And these things, we're an old city. We have old pipes. As much as we monitor and keep an eye on what's happening, sometimes there's a breach, a break in a pipe, and we have to deal with it. So the residents I'm not getting a lot of pushback. And I think they really understand that they can really make a contribution, and they want to.
You said that you expect that we could have a fix by the end of the week. I understand this work would normally take upwards of 5 weeks. So can you explain what the city's doing to address what's happening with the pipe?
Mm-hmm. One of the situations, the bypass pipes are in place now on the Fort Garry Bridge. There was a lane closure for a good week and a half to allow the pipes to be set up. Now there's concrete jersey barriers, they're called, those concrete things that separate vehicles from the pipes. The challenge is one of the pumps. So whether it's a defect from the manufacturer, whether it's something just not working, one of the pumps for one of the pipes is not working. So we have to pump the sewage up to the pipe that cross the river, then that flows naturally down to the South Treatment Plant. So the city is working with the manufacturer. I know that we're getting a third backup pump to have in case something happens again, So all of this work, they're working around the clock. Divers have been out there getting the pipes initially sorted out in the beginning. Now they're working with the pumps and the pumping station. So a lot of work that's going on.
So let me ask you this, because a listener wrote into me this morning and they said, we have been leaning on our aging infrastructure for years. The south end of the city is one of the biggest areas of development, and it's putting all the pressures on the system. Are we at a point in the city where we should slow development in South Winnipeg until our pipes are upgraded? The mayor weighed in and said, these events, quote, show why the city needs to spend millions of dollars to upgrade its sewer infrastructure. So obviously there's an acknowledgement of where we're at with our aging infrastructure, but at the end of the day, do we need to make tough decisions to slow development so we don't increase pressure on our systems?
Well, we could never do this type of development downtown because the pipe systems are so old. Those out here, we have combined sewers. Downtown, they're not. I'm sorry. We have separated sewer system for runoff and sewer in the newer developments downtown. We could never handle this amount of development of about 40 to 50,000 people downtown because those pipes are so old.
Is development in the south, is that related to why this pipe burst, though?
No, this pipe was laid in 1970. It's just old. It's just the two pipes are very old. And I think the challenge that residents need to understand, that everyone needs to understand, is the city alone cannot keep up with the infrastructure costs. We need to have provincial and federal support. We carry the burden of the most infrastructure with our population. We could raise taxes 10% to pay for all the sewer upgrades, 10% or more. But we need to partner, and we're working on it with the province and the feds. But some of these projects aren't, I guess you'd say, sexy projects to fund, right? They're not, I don't know. There's a lot of perspectives on why we're not securing federal and provincial funding, but a city can't do it alone.
You talked about, the fact, just looking at this raw sewage going into our river. I think your word was disaster. So I just want you to hear a clip from Nora Cason. She's the Canada Research Chair in Environmental Influences on Water Quality at the University of Winnipeg. She's also on Lake Winnipeg Foundation Science Advisory Council.
Pretty frustrated to hear about it. Any pollution that gets into our rivers ultimately washes down into Lake Winnipeg. And these kinds of sewage spills are sources of pollution that are relatively easy to control.
What's your reaction to that, the sensibility that these are easy to control?
Well, money can just about buy anything. So if we had the money, sure, we could replace our pipes sooner. But it's not easy getting money out of the federal government and the provincial government. Before I was elected, I worked a lot on bioretention systems, water purification systems. My family grew up in the Interlake area. We played on Lake Winnipeg all the time. So I completely understand the issues at hand here, and it is a disaster. But I disagree, and I say these aren't easy solutions to fix. They're easy if you have the money. It's not easy getting money for sewer treatment and projects like this.
What would you like to say to residents in the south part of Winnipeg this morning who are wondering whether or not the fix that you're going to place is going to be a temporary fix to get us over this hurdle, but then are wondering when they're just going to be in this position again?
Well, we don't know, right? We're going to fix it. We're going to hope that it's fixed. We'll have a backup pump. Ultimately, we will be replacing those two pipes under the river. We've got a $95 million budgeted Southwest Interceptor pipe, which will act as a backup that starts actual underground construction in 2026. Again, like I said, the residents of Southwest Winnipeg are incredibly resilient. They'll rise to the challenge to use less water. And I think we all should use less water. We all should think about conserving water even more than we currently do. We are, and I always get in trouble when I say this, but I think, you look around the world, we're a very, very privileged place to be living here in Manitoba. And we have our challenges, of course we do, but in the big picture, I don't think this is the end of the world to ask people to conserve water to help protect the environment. And I know in Southwest Winnipeg, residents will do exactly that.
Thank you for being on the program this morning.
Thank you very much, Marcy.
That is Janice Lukes, the councillor for Waverley West. Of course, the neighborhood that she represents is one of those that's been identified where you're being asked to conserve water today because of the sewage leak. 788-3205 if you have any feedback for us on this story. Let's go to other stories now. Heather Walls is here with headlines.
Good morning. A man who was switched at birth more than 60 years ago says he is moving closer to understanding who he is. About 2 years ago, Edward Ambrose learned he and another man had been switched at birth at a hospital in Arborg in 1955. Ambrose says it was emotional when he learned he was actually Métis and not Ukrainian. He received his citizenship card from the Manitoba Métis Federation last week and now is calling on the Manitoba government to apologize for that hospital mix-up. And the first day with community safety officers patrolling Winnipeg transit buses is being called a success. Yesterday, 21 officers rode downtown bus routes. We're going to hear from one rider who says she is happy to see safety officers on her bus. Our next local news coming up at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Corey Funk, traffic?
Yeah, we were talking earlier about that collision on westbound North Perimeter that has now been cleared. Heard from Andy and Doug on the commuter line. Thanks for those calls. Still some residual backups, but you can go on most median and curb lane. If you guys see anything else, though, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
We are still at -9. It's partly cloudy in Winnipeg and will be cloudy for most of the day with a high of -2. Winds will be pretty light winds, up to 15 in Winnipeg today. Coming up after 8 o'clock on the program, 2 teen girls that one of our producers met at an overnight city drop-in as she was exploring a series on youth violence, shared that they have not been in school this year. Both are students from the Winnipeg School Division. We're going to hear from the superintendent about it after 8 o'clock. Stay with us. Matt Henderson and a full conversation we'll have for you after 8. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We have World Report coming up next. It's 1 minute to.
On Cue with Tom Power.
Adam Beach has been in over 60 films and TV shows, from Canada's North of 60 to Clint Eastwood's Flags of Our Fathers. Adam Beach will tell you how he began acting in Manitoba and why he's drawn to his complicated character in the new film, Exile.
I did not speak with her!
That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel-Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Belleville, Ontario is a city of 50,000 people. In one 48-hour period, 23 people overdosed there. We'll hear from residents of that city about their state of emergency and what needs to change. That's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. It is being called an unprecedented ruling. Alabama Supreme Court says that frozen embryos are children under state law. That means that anyone who destroys them could be held criminally liable. The CBC's Richard Madden joins me now from Washington. Richard, what are the circumstances surrounding this ruling?
Yeah, this is all based on 3 sets of parents who sued their medical provider when their frozen embryos were accidentally destroyed. A trial court rejected their wrongful death lawsuit, but last week, the state's high court disagreed, with the Chief Justice using quotes from the Bible about the sanctity of unborn life. Now, IVF treatment uses as many eggs as possible, so that has doctors concerned if they would face wrongful death lawsuits if they discard them. Here's the CEO of Infertility Association Resolve, Barbara Kalura.
Now the court is saying that that's a person. Can we freeze embryos? I don't know. Can you freeze a person? What will happen to all of those embryos?
Now, this ruling could not only raise the price of fertility treatment in Alabama, the risks and unknown legal issues could also force some clinics in that state to simply stop treatments and shut down.
This has some broader implications, not only for those in the state of Alabama, but across the U.S.
Yeah, other states could follow Alabama's lead, which could dramatically impact access to fertility treatment in certain states. Now that Alabama's court ruling says that embryos have the same legal protections as a child under state law. Now, the White House is calling this ruling a terrifying development, blasting Republican leaders for reducing access to fertility treatment. They're also turning it into a campaign issue for women's rights heading into November's election.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. The United States is showing its support for Israel at the International Court of Justice. It's pushing back against new calls for Israel to pull its forces out of the occupied Palestinian territories. The court is in the middle of a week of hearings on the issue. Here is U.S. Legal Representative Richard Visek.
Under the established framework,
any movement towards Israel's withdrawal from the West Bank and Gaza requires consideration of Israel's very real security needs.
The World Court will give a non-binding advisory opinion on the legality of the Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories. This hearing is not strictly linked to Israel's war with Hamas, but other countries have used it to call on Israel to immediately pull out of Gaza. Ukraine urgently needs artillery shells, and Canada is under pressure to start producing more munitions. But until it can do that, Canada is signaling it will work with the Czech Republic to get more artillery shells to Ukraine. Murray Brewster has the details.
Just about everywhere he goes these days, Defense Minister Bill Blair gets asked about ramped-up munitions production in Canada. He has, however, been talking with allies.
I've entered into a memorandum of understanding with one of our European allies, the Czech Republic, with respect to perhaps acquiring munitions that they currently have in their possession that will enable us to acquire those munitions and make them available more rapidly to Ukraine.
Petr Pavel, president of the Czech Republic, last weekend said his country had secured 800,000 artillery rounds in different countries. It needs help from allies to get them to Ukraine. Defense sources tell CBC News that Canada has been looking at the Czech proposal and is prepared to contribute as much as $30 million. There's concern among allies, however, that Canada may use this to continue to defer on ramping up its own domestic production. Bill Blair urges patience.
We'll have more to say in the not too distant future about how we're investing in increased Canadian production of munitions.
Kristen Cianferrani of the Canadian Association of Security and Defense Industries says her concern is how politics is creeping into the debate.
We're seeing these things become wedge issues, Ukraine becoming a wedge issue.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says a shortage of munitions was one of the reasons his troops withdrew last weekend from the strategic eastern city of Avdiivka, and the Russians are taking advantage of delays in aid to Ukraine. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
India is launching its largest international naval event today. Canada is among the 50 countries taking part in the exercise. It's aimed at boosting maritime cooperation. It's also highlighting India's growing strategic importance in the Indo-Pacific region. Freelance reporter Rebecca Bundin has that story.
India's biennial Milan naval exercise, meaning meeting or union in Hindi, started in 1995 and has grown in its size and significance over the years. This year's event comes amid a challenging geopolitical backdrop, including growing concerns over the security situation in the Red Sea. India's Navy says that 15 warships from countries including the US, Iran, Russia and Japan are due to participate in a naval exercise in the Bay of Bengal.
It also speaks to the influence that India is increasingly commanding in the global arena.
Defence analyst Shruti Pandalai says the event comes at a critical time.
You're talking about an exercise which is looking at enhancing maritime security and safety of maritime commerce, which has become very important in this current sort of global climate of fractured geopolitics.
The harbour phase has already commenced, while the sea drills will take place from Saturday, coinciding with 2 years since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Canada is also participating in the event. Relations between the countries continue to be strained, months after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau accused India of being involved in the killing of a Sikh activist in British Columbia, something which New Delhi denies. Rebecca Bundin for CBC News, Mumbai.
Farmers in India run from police firing tear gas at the Punjab-Haryana border. They're trying to resume their march to the capital. Talks with the government failed earlier this week. Thousands of farmers have been camping out along the Shambu border. Police put up barricades to stop them. Today, some farmers brought in bulldozers and other heavy machinery. They're warning they will use them to push their way through to Delhi. The farmers are demanding guaranteed minimum prices for certain crops. They say they will continue their protests until their demands are met. Thousands of trainee doctors in South Korea are walking off the job today. They are protesting the government's plan to admit more students to medical schools. The plan is supposed to meet the growing demand for health care in one of the world's most rapidly aging societies. But the protesters say there are enough doctors and the government should focus on better pay and working conditions. Alberta is preparing for an early start to this year's wildfire season. The province had a record-breaking season last year. And now lower snowpacks and dry weather forecasts are forcing officials to move up their plans. The CBC's Julia Wong explains.
The snow is sparse in Whitecourt, Alberta. That, coupled with dry conditions and warmer than usual temperatures, is fueling concern this wildfire season could be a rough one.
We are declaring an early start to the 2024 wildfire season.
So Alberta's season started yesterday instead of the typical March 1st. Alberta's Forestry Minister Todd Loewen.
This past year, when we look back, the fire started earlier than expected.
In 2023, thousands of people were forced out of their homes because of encroaching flames. 2.2 million hectares ultimately burned, the worst season in the province's history. Contracts for crews and equipment are starting 2 weeks early, and Alberta Forestry is asking for money for an additional 100 firefighters.
Well, I think we're going to be more prepared than we were last year for sure.
Alberta Wildfire Executive Director Bernie Schmidt on what people can expect this spring.
And that is very difficult to predict. El Nino is predicted to slacken off here in the next little while. What that's going to do is change the weather patterns coming into Alberta.
The opposition NDP say the province would have been better off if it did not need to worry about hiring at the start of every season. Alberta NDP forestry critic Heather Sweet.
We wouldn't be in this situation today if we had year-round firefighting.
On top of that, the Alberta government is again asking people with relevant experience or heavy equipment to volunteer and support wildfire crews. Julia Wong, CBC News, Whitecourt, Alberta.
It is a big day for Elton John fans. The Rocket Man is auctioning off some of his most prized possessions. Nearly 1,000 items from John's Atlanta home are on the block at Christie's in New York. They include some of his costumes, jewelry, and even a luxury car. The items have been on display at the Christie's Auction House in Rockefeller Center for a couple of weeks. It is all expected to go for up to $10 million.
If you did.
That is World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
And all the science I don't understand. It's just my job 5 days a week. A rocket.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio. You're listening to CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on the app or YouTube. Wednesday, it's -9. We have ongoing coverage this morning of our series on youth violence. 2 teenage girls that one of our CBC producers, Wendy Parker, met at an overnight city drop-in, shared that they have not been in school this year. Both are students from the Winnipeg School Division. We're going to hear from the superintendent about it, who says it's brutal, it's devastating to hear, and he has been discussing things moving forward in terms of changing the culture within the school division as he looks at what is happening now with the current student population. So stay tuned. We're going to play you part of that interview, and we had quite a long discussion about this yesterday, so you're going to even find a longer version on our app. But straight ahead, we'll hear what Matt Henderson had to say in response. First to Heather Wells for other developing news. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, it's an unusual morning in southwest Winnipeg where people are being asked to take short showers, only flush if necessary, and generally cut back on how much water they use. This as city crews continue trying to fix an ongoing sewer leak at the Fort Garry Bridge. So far, more than 221 litres has spilled into the Red River. We're going to take you there coming up. As well, Indigenous leaders, advocates, and community members are meeting here in Winnipeg addressing the need for a national law to protect ancestral burial sites. We'll hear about it in our next local news coming up at 8:30.
All right. Thank you very much, Heather.
You're welcome.
Let's get into the forecast with Abby Adeyemi.
Yeah, trying to see some blue out there, but I see a mix of cloud also there, so it looks more like an overcast as you're starting your day. Winnipeg is waking up to mainly cloudy skies. The current temperature sits at -9. Now, the winds are gentle, but the chill is going to make it feel brisk, so you might want to prepare for that. Now, as we move through the day, expect those cloudy conditions to stay with us, and we'll be seeing a high of -2 degrees. Tonight, as the night falls, signals the skies will transition from partly cloudy and then it will be clear near midnight. So if you're one of those that just wants to see this full moon come up, you will definitely enjoy that. And then don't forget, the temperature will be dropping to -9. Right now, Winnipeg is at -9.
All right. Thanks very much, Abby.
You're welcome.
Let's get into what's going on the commute. Corey Funk has been keeping his eye on a couple of different things. And what's the latest on what's happening out there?
Yeah, a few things to keep an eye out for. Just got a call from Abraham who said westbound Logan, right before King Edward, in the right lane, there's a car with its blinkers on, kind of blocking that right lane. You have to stay left to get around that. Look out for that. As well, on Abenoji-Mikana approaching St. Mary's, eastbound Abenoji-Mikana, there's a multi-vehicle collision blocking the curb lane, so keep left to get around that as well. Those are the two biggest issues going on so far out there, but if you're walking, biking, driving, you see anything else going on the roads, on the highways, give me a call and I'll let folks know what you're seeing out there. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, speaking of calls, we've been talking a great deal about the sewer leakage and the spill rather into the river, as you just heard on the news, and people conserving water in South Winnipeg. We also had Janice Lukes, the councillor for Waverley West, on just before 8 o'clock on the show. That interview prompted this call.
Oh, hi there. This is Milt Homley here. I'm called in about the story about the water in the south of Winnipeg. Now, I ain't affected in the sense that I live there because I live in the north of Winnipeg, but I'm affected in the sense that I'm kind of losing my marbles over here. In the sense that, like, folks are having a hard time conserving water. I don't quite understand that because, like, I'm already doing that. If I need to run the dishwasher, I'm filling it up. I'm taking shorter showers every day. And hey, sometimes you don't need to flush all the time. If it's yeller, sometimes you can let it meller. Anyway, I just thought, man, the fact that folks are having a hard time with this, I find a little concerning and disappointing. And hey, Janice Lukes, Canada happens to be one of them countries you were talking about that don't always have clean running water. We just happen to be privileged to live in a community that don't have to deal with that all the time. Thank you.
That came into our listener line, 788-3205. Remember, you can comment on anything you hear on the show and weigh in there. $8:15 a.m. is the time right now. And next, as I mentioned, we do have ongoing coverage of youth violence in our series. And let's continue with a question that you hear a lot. It's this: why aren't those kids in school? Now, the reasons, of course, for why some students aren't in school can be very complex. That is one of the things we learned last week when we heard in our series from two young teenager girls who were calling Nadine and Paula to protect their identities. They say they no longer go to school. They've been out for almost a year. They've been students in the Winnipeg School Division. But both Nadine, who is 16 years old, and Paula, who's just 14 years old, say they were suspended after fights with other students. So as mentioned, Nadine has not been back for over a year. Paula's been out of school since last June. In a moment, we will hear from the division superintendent. But first, here are the girls speaking to CBC's Wendy Parker.
When did you stop going to school?
Last year.
Why did you stop going to school?
I got into too many fights. Then they didn't let me back. Then I tried to go to a different school. They didn't let me. Took too long. Still waiting. Didn't call me. Didn't tell me if I couldn't go or not. Just didn't bother.
Do you miss school?
No. Just prefer not to be in school. I had to grow up too fast to be in school.
What do you mean you had to grow up too fast?
I had to learn to take care of myself at the age of 12, man. I had to act 16 when I was 12.
And why do you say you've grown up way faster than you should have?
Because in the res I actually get to be a kid and do what I want. But here, I can't be a kid. There can't be anyone watching me now. I gotta take care of myself. I gotta feed myself. I gotta get myself some clothes and shit. Like, I never used to do that in the res, yo. Now I gotta do that for myself. All of that. I gotta protect myself. Someone comes at me, I gotta fight for myself, you know?
Do you ever see a point though where you won't use violence, or you hope you don't need to react that way?
No, there's just always gonna be violence in my life.
What about your family? Do they want you back at school?
Yeah, my dad keeps asking, so.
Last month, I spoke with Winnipeg School Division Superintendent Matt Henderson about student suspensions. But we're following up now with another conversation about Nadine and Paula, who have been out of school for so long. And Matt Henderson's in studio again. Good morning.
Good morning.
So your reaction to hearing this?
Yeah, when this originally aired, it was, a busy morning in my house and trying to get the kids out and all that kind of stuff. And we all just had to stop and because it's brutal. It's devastating to hear. Yeah.
You're visibly
brutal.
upset by this.
Yeah. I mean, these are sweet kids.
They are out of schools that they say are in the Winnipeg School Division. I know when we spoke to you last month, you said anytime a child doesn't come to school, it's an emergency, is what you said. Nadine says, though, she's been out of school for more than a year, and she says the school she's waiting to return to hasn't gotten back to her. What is your response to that?
We're trying to right the ship here. Kids have been getting the impression, not only Winnipeg School Division, but other divisions as well, where they're not welcome. They don't feel like they belong. And in this particular case, we failed these kids, and we've got to do better. And so, we've done exceptional work, I would say, in the last 6 months of not suspending kids, of when there are serious issues, bringing families together. Our principals and teachers are doing phenomenal work around this. I don't want people to get the idea that schools are kicking kids out, but what has happened with these two scholars is that they've gotten the impression that they're not welcome, and that can't stand. And so we have to do a lot better as a school division.
They're right of the age when we looked at absentee rates. They're in, if you look at their ages, 14 and 16, which we can confirm here, that would land them right around the grade 7 to 9. I'm only mentioning that because in your stats for suspensions, that sort of is a spike point. That's an issue. Yeah. So what supports could be needed at that age to better keep kids in school? Because I suspect there would be educators or those working in the middle school levels as well that are maybe grappling with fights like the one that were described by these teens, and where they go from here, and then maybe what leads to kids falling through the gaps.
Yeah, and this is of concern for us around early adolescence, and particularly early adolescence girls, where we're seeing an increased level of violence. The two girls, when they were talking about somebody will look at us and we'll just start fighting. And that's what we're seeing. Our middle year schools are really thinking about what does it mean to be middle years as opposed to junior high school. We don't actually want early adolescence kids, replicating high school. We want to hold them closer. And so that means that in, grade 7, grade 8, there's one teacher and there's all sorts of extracurriculars. And kids don't have to leave for lunch. They can stay on campus and be safe. And so we're having all these discussions. I was talking with a middle school principal on Friday about this. This is not foreign to our principals, and they're saying, look, we're doing massive healing circles, and ceremony is at the forefront of what we're doing in school. And when you walk into our schools, you can smell sage, and for a lot of students, that means that's a safe space. And so we've had to really think about what does it mean to decolonize our schools, so that when kids come in, they can heal before they learn.
Which is relevant to the conversation because, of course, that you did hear the girls talking about coming from reserve into the city as well. So they did say they were in some kind of a fight with another group. Then they said those students were back in school. I'm wondering, when you had that dynamic, what do educators do? Well,
every situation is unique. What happens in these situations where it's really complex and there are big incidents is that principals and teachers and student support really have to make sense of particular incidents. I think now with Winnipeg School Division, we want to keep kids in their schools, but there are times where we have to say, oh, no, we have to separate these students. And we take the care now to make sure that we're moving kids to schools that make sense, where principals are involved, where family is involved. And I suspect in this particular situation that care was not necessarily there, but also that we didn't have the whole family. There's two things that struck me about that interview. One child said, I've had to grow up so quickly because I just have to watch my back everywhere in Winnipeg. And the second part is when, the question was asked, what do your parents think? Do they want you in school? And they sort of said, yeah, no, my parents do want me in school. And this is what we're facing right now, where, we'll do home visits, we'll call, we do family nights, we bring in language classes, and a lot of parents are just saying, not interested. We're not interested in sending our kids to school. And that's, we can only control so much, but what we can control is how do we make it so that parents actually trust the school system and want to send their kids to schools?
What's the direct follow-up? How are you going to look into this?
Yeah, and we've already identified who the families are and how we can reach out and how we can support. Our divisional cook, Marcia, is just brilliant at working with families and saying, you got to keep going and don't stop. And school's so important, and really wrapping families around in love, and that's what we have to do, even when there's big events, because we also will have families saying, hey, what are you going to do about these girls that did this? And we have to bring all the families together for healing.
How many students are suspended for such long periods of time? A year?
And that's not possible. In fact, principals only have, under the Public Schools Act, can only suspend learners for 5 days. And then beyond that, it goes to the superintendent's level.
Can they say you're suspended for a year?
No. The girls said that they were kicked out of school, and they may not have, the adults may not have actually said that or done that, but this is the impression that the girls have. And that's enough for me to sort of say, wait a second, what we've communicated as adults to these girls is that you don't belong and you're not wanted. And that's the travesty.
What impact does that have on the longer term chances of success at school the longer you're out?
Oh, it's huge. If the longer the child is out of school, the less likely for later success in life. So we never give up. We never stop. There's a sickness in Winnipeg that's been brought on by, I would say, organized crime and methamphetamine and drugs. And one of our options is to give up and just to sort of say, no, we're just going to do school. But I think as Winnipeg School Division and other school systems, we're sort of the last lines in some respects of providing that essential care and keeping Winnipeg from exploding. And so that's what we'll continue to do. And we're refocused now, and we're endeavoring to be part of that healing process.
What needs to change to help kids who are at risk, who are not at school regularly? Like, what is the school's role there? I
would say one thing that you said, at risk. One of the things that we've done in Winnipeg School Division is we don't use that term anymore. We use the terms on track or off track. And if they're off track, then me as the teacher, the adult, the onus is on us to get the child back on track. When we use at risk, that's code often for, well, this is a kid that we just can't handle. And so part of it is a bit of a cultural shift.
Last quick question. And while I respect all the hard work of educators out there, if somebody suspended these kids and they came from a school, and if it's true that they haven't been seen for a year in class, will somebody be held responsible within the system?
At the end of the day, I'm responsible, and I'll take that responsibility.
Thank you very much for coming in.
Okay.
Matt Henderson is superintendent of the Winnipeg School Division. I had a long conversation with him yesterday that is part of his response as we have our ongoing series on youth violence, which led us into a conversation with 2 teen girls that have not been in school in his division for nearly a year. If you want to hear the longer version of our conversation, you can go to our CBC Listen app.
You have lots of questions about your own life and this really complex world around you. I'm Sarocha Coelho. I'm the host of the new live call-in show, Just Asking. I take your questions about what's in the news or your finances, health, even your relationships, and then throw them to an expert. Our show launches on February 24th, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, live from coast to coast to coast. Just Asking. Let's figure it out together.
-9 in the city of Winnipeg this morning. It's mostly cloudy, and it's snowing in Thompson, still -24. So our temperatures across the province really haven't changed since early hours. Brandon's also still remaining cloudy. You're sitting at -8 in the Wheat City. Well, we've been talking a lot about South Winnipeg this morning, where 10 neighborhoods are being asked to conserve water because of a sewage spill, the biggest sewage spill in at least a decade. It's now dumped 221 million litres into the Red River in Winnipeg. That's by Corey Funk's math, the size of 88 Olympic-sized swimming pools full, dumped into the river. Janice Lukes, councillor for Waverley West, one of the south neighbourhoods where they're being asked to conserve water this morning, was on the program before 8. We've got some comments to get to. You've been writing into us about this, but first to a call.
I think this is a great opportunity to stop blaming farmers for nutrients entering the lakes. It's clear that this is a major issue that keeps happening again and again, and the city is responsible for a large amount of sewage and nutrients and everything that keeps ending up in the lakes and turning it green, and we really need to stop blaming the farmers for this. We do everything we can to keep nutrients in the ground where they're most valuable to us and most effective, and we're sick of getting the blame for this.
Maureen Mack wrote into Facebook this morning, my Marcia Marcusa page acting as a show page, echoing what that caller said. We're going to see a thick green blanket, Maureen wrote in, of algae that this produces at the beaches next summer, and blame the farmers for putting nitrates in the lake. Killing the lake every year with sewer dumping by the city of Winnipeg. Paul Weiss says he was listening to Janice Luke's interview before 8 o'clock and said, please explain why our city isn't fiscally self-sustainable. Why should we be reliant on federal and provincial funding for essential infrastructure? I don't hear this being raised by other cities, Paul writes. So people weighing in on this, Janice Luke's talking about the aging infrastructure in the city and suggesting that the city of Winnipeg needs financial assistance from other levels of government to try to get ahead of our aging infrastructure. If you haven't yet read about this, please go to our website and check out all the stories that our news team has been hard at work at covering how we got here to today. So this started spewing 2 weeks ago today. February 7th was the start of all of this. And it is sewage spilling into the river from the outfall and crossing at 3100 Abenogi-Mi'kmaq. So it started there. The City of Winnipeg crews in November found problems with 2 of these river crossing sewer pipes near the Fort Garry Bridge, and then one was taken out of service. So the bypass system led to a closure, and then it went on from there. They hope, Janice Lukes was saying, that it will be, they'll have some kind of a fix in place by the end of this week, a temporary fix. Corey Funk, there's a couple things to fix in traffic.
That's right. Eastbound Abenogi-Mi'kmaq, approaching St. Mary's, there's a multi-vehicle collision blocking the curb lane. Keep left to get around that. As well, Abraham called, so it's on westbound King Edward. I said westbound Logan before, but it's just on King Edward at Logan. In the right-hand lane, there's a car with his flashers on blocking the curb lane, so keep left to get around that as well. Thanks for that call, Abraham. If you see anything else, 204-788-3093.
Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is mostly cloudy. Our temperature's been at -9 throughout most of the morning. Expect a cloudy day, just a slight breeze, and a mild -2 this afternoon. Ease off the taps. People in southwest Winnipeg are being asked to take short showers and only flush if necessary. This as city crews try to get a handle on an ongoing leak of sewage into the Red River. CBC reporter Megan Ketchison is in Fort Richmond. Megan?
Well, this is a leak into the Red River that has dumped 221 million liters of untreated sewage into the Red River. And this area where you're being asked to conserve water is a huge area of the city, affecting thousands of people. This is basically from Abenogi-Mi'kmaq south to through St. Norbert, and then from the Red River west. You're asked to go cottage style, no unnecessary flushing, shorter showers, and don't wash your car in those parts of the city. Now, Waverley West Councillor Janice Lukes says she isn't getting much pushback on the request to conserve water. She says it's an old city with old pipes, and they're monitoring and reacting as well as they can. Now, one man I spoke to was going through a car wash, and he said he hadn't heard the request. Others say they are willing to do their part. Now, one man I also spoke to said he's frustrated as a taxpayer when he hears about the failure of infrastructure of such a magnitude, which is having an impact on the rivers in the city. Reporting live, Megan Ketchison, CBC News.
Thanks so much, Megan. A Winnipeg man who was switched at birth 6 decades ago is moving closer to reclaiming his lost Métis identity. About 2 years ago, Edward Ambrose and Richard Beauvais learned they had been sent home with the wrong families from a hospital in Arborg in 1955. Ambrose, who grew up with a Ukrainian family, learned he is actually Métis. Last week, the Manitoba Métis Federation handed the 68-year-old his citizenship card.
I was officially a Métis. Wishful thinking what I was growing up was not that. I grew up as Ukrainian, and of getting the card, it was pulling me to who I am. That was very emotional for me.
Ambrose says he is building relationships with his biological family and the Métis community. He now wants the Manitoba government to apologize for the hospital mix-up. In a statement, Health Minister Uzoma Eseguera says the province recognizes the devastating impacts caused in this case. They say the government looks forward to communicating with both men privately in the near future. The first day with community safety officers patrolling on Winnipeg transit buses is being called a success. 21 officers rode downtown routes yesterday. They are trained to de-escalate dangerous situations, provide emergency first aid help, and help vulnerable people get the resources they need. Bus rider Colleen McManus welcomes the officers.
I actually very happy about that. I mean, we take the bus every day for work, and sometimes it gets a little scary for us as well as the driver.
Safety is an issue for Sean Berman, a former transit inspector. It's an issue he knows well.
It always seemed like there was a bit of a gap in between what we could do and what needed to be done, and I believe this team kind of bridges that gap and allows us to better serve the citizens of Winnipeg.
The Union for Bus Drivers says its members are cautiously optimistic the safety officers will take some of the stress out of their jobs. Indigenous leaders, advocates, and community members are meeting in Winnipeg to address the need for a national law to protect ancestral burial sites. Jackie Bouvier is a third-generation residential school survivor from northwest Saskatchewan. She has 2 sisters who died at school and are buried there.
That was my mother's dying wish, was to find our baby sisters. There was ground penetration radar done. They announced that there was 95 detections of that cemetery, and 2 of them, I believe, are my sisters, my baby sisters.
Bouvier says they died in the 1920s. Now she wants closure and plans to go to the site in the spring and have a ceremony for her sisters. She supports the push for a national law to protect burial sites. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency is recalling some salad that you might be wanting for lunch today. Taylor Farms Mexican-style street corn chopped salad kits that have a best before date of today due to possible salmonella contamination. Anyone with the salad should throw it out or return it. The agency hasn't received any reports of illness, but warns food contaminated with salmonella may look and smell fine, but can still make you sick. You can find more news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
I'm famous in the newsroom for my salads.
You always eat right after your show.
I know. I eat those bag salads. So I did have that one, but I heard this warning. I'd read it somewhere. So I already checked. I'm going to be okay.
Good. Smart.
All right. Thank you for the morning, Heather
You're
Wells.
welcome.
And we can catch us in as well. Joni Nicolo, all of our hardworking news department. Our live crew otherwise, Corey Funk, Abby Adiemi, Brad Lillies. Thank you, guys. And thank you to our hardworking team of associate producers, as well as Leif Larson, and Nellie Gonzalez, our leaders in our unit at Current Affairs at CBC Manitoba. Speaking of Abby and Corey, so last word to Corey here on the commute?
Yeah, eastbound Abinogi-Meekina at St. Mary's. There's a multi-vehicle collision blocking the curb lane. Keep left to get around that.
Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Abby?
Currently -9 in the city. The most of the south part of the city, we're seeing the province will be seeing sun and cloudy conditions today. However, Thompson is chilly at -24, and it might drop to -28 this morning, posing a risk of frostbite. And Gimli is all seeing -13 degrees right now.
All right, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
Well, let's talk about what's on Q. Yes, the Current's coming up next, but at 10 o'clock this morning on Q, Canadian Canadian actor Adam Beach, from right here in Manitoba, has been in over 60 films and television shows. You might know him from north of 60, maybe Smoke Signals, Flags of Our Fathers, depends how long you've been a fan. You might know him just from hanging out in Manitoba. Today, he's going to talk to Tom Power on Q about his beginnings acting here in our province, and also why he's drawn to a complicated character that he's now playing in a new film called Exile. So Adam Beach on Q today at 10 o'clock. Check it out. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thank you for listening. Take care, be well, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow right here on CBC.